Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees and the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors for Monday, September 10th, 2018. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Phyllis, could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Trustees Rita Dozell.
Here.
Sandy Hemmerly.
Here.
Chris Hansen. Mark Lasis.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Rob Huss. Sorry, Rob. Here. Town Clerk Phil Sarton here.
All right, thanks. Next is the approval of the agenda, and you will notice we have a little bit different agenda this evening. We've got the Superior Youth Leadership Council interviews coming up next before reports, questions, and issues and public comment. I'd also like to make one other proposed change and move Sheriff Joe Pelley's presentation to between D and E. So after the Youth Leadership Council interviews, have him present at that point in the meeting. Any other changes or items? Okay, if I could get a motion to approve the agenda as proposed. Motion by Trustee Lasis, second by Trustee Dozell. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. All right. Next we have Superior Youth Leadership Council interviews.
Thanks, Mayor. We have a number of the kids tonight that have applied to be on the Youth Leadership Council. Its timing is in conjunction with the beginning of the school year. We have a number of vacancies due to turnover from graduation from last May. So typically what we do is we have the kids come up all together and just introduce themselves to the board, and then if the board has any questions for them, they can ask them at that time.
Okay, very good.
So if all the kids would like to come up and just state your name to the podium, please.
Yeah, come on up to the podium right here. Thank you. For those that are not familiar, Superior Youth Leadership Council is a group of students that are 8th grade through 12th grade. They do a number of community service projects throughout the year, and they're really our voice of youth to the town board. So we're grateful to have this group and grateful that there's so much interest in continuing it. So thank you all for your interest. And why don't you just one at a time, you've nicely lined up there, so one at a time come up and just introduce yourself, give us your name and what grade you're in and school that you go to, and maybe just one sentence on what drew you to be a part of Superior Youth Leadership Council. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Matthew Leal. I'm in 8th grade and I go to Peak to Peak. I wanted to join the Youth Leadership Council because I would like to help the youth of Superior.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, I'm Joe Brostovich. I go to El Dorado PK8, and I want to be on the Youth Leadership Council because I'd like to give a voice to the youth of Superior.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ella Malm. I go to El Dorado K-8 and I'm in 8th grade. I wanted to be in the SYLC because I like discussing topics and challenges and conflicts and finding a solution to them.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Rithi Prabhu. I'm an 8th grader at Summit Middle School, and I want to be part of SYLC because I want to give back to the community that's given so much to me.
Thank you.
I'm Sahana Balaji. I'm a 12th grader at Monarch High School, and I wanted to be a part of the council because I wanted to make a difference in Superior.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Connor Ryan. I'm a freshman at Monarch High School, I'd like to be a part of the Superior Youth Leadership Council because I'd like to give back to my community.
I'm Colin Folsom, and I'm in 8th grade at Eldorado K, and I'd like to be a part of SYLC because I like to give back to the community and just be a part of it as well.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Riley Carpenter. I am a sophomore at Monarch High School, and I would really appreciate being a member of this council because I find that the leadership skills I might learn here are very valuable and will be applicable for the rest of my life.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bella Fernandez Wagner. I'm a sophomore at Monarch, and I want to be in the Superior Youth Leadership Council because I want to give back and get more involved in the community that has given me so much and I've grown up in.
Great, thank you. All right, we appreciate that introduction, and Kevin and I are especially proud tonight. For those who may not have noticed, we have.
Are those conflicts of interest? Or
I think we have the conflict of interest, not them. All right, great group of applicants here, and really do appreciate all of your interest. Does the board have any questions, specific questions for any of our applicants?
Mark's good.
I just want to say thank you for volunteering to get involved in the community.
All right, I second that. And I'll ask my standard question about conflict of interest. Do any of you have any side businesses, consulting youth leadership events or anything like that? Okay, I didn't think so.
Landscaping, mowing.
Well, now that could be, that could be. But, all right, thank you again for coming in, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you. You're welcome to stay as long as you like at our board meeting. Always interesting things happen here. Next up, we have our Sheriff Joe Pelley. We've moved you up on the agenda, so welcome.
I appreciate that. I'm going to be doing this 4 times this week, so it's nice to be moving along.
Yes.
Thank you, trustees, for having me. I'm here to present facts and information on a ballot issue that will be on the November ballot at my request and approved by the commissioners. And that is a major capital project to build a new alternative sentence facility in the county and to modernize our jail. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about what that means. The commissioners have approved the ballot language. I believe it's going to be item 1A. I think it's going to be the only county item on the ballot. There's a 0.185% flood sales tax relief. Sales relief tax that's a sales tax that expires in 2019. It was placed after the floods to help the county recover from the loss of all of the roads and that kind of thing. I'm proposing we replace that with a new tax of the exact same amount for a period of 5 years to fund a major capital need that's been building and an issue in our county for a long time. Our current county jail is over 30 years old. It was built to hold 287 people. We regularly put over 500 people in it now by double bunking and smashing people together in small space. Right now I have 20 people boarded in other county jails, in Park County, out in Akron. We're paying for that as well. We are facing an inmate population with greater mental health needs, greater medical needs. We have a lot more female inmates than we had when the jail was designed. Unfortunately, we are reaching gender equality with the inmate population. And the current jail is configured, it's based on an outdated design that doesn't include direct supervision of inmates. The current lack of space in our jail inhibits our ability to deliver programming, to adequately perform jail duties. It really inhibits our ability to properly classify people and put them in the right space, and our inability also to keep all of the people with high needs in one place, so we're able to really direct programming. Some of our alternative sentence, what did I do? There we go. Get that out of the way. So our alternative sentence facilities are, there's one in Boulder at 21st and Canyon. There's one at the 200 block of Main Street in Longmont, and we run some programs out of the jail. They run in separate facilities. There's a backlog waiting to get people into those facilities. The one there on the left is at 21st and Canyon. It's a building owned by the county, and we pay a contract agency to run it called CoreCivic, which is a private correctional institution. The one on the right is the Longmont Community Treatment Center. It's in the 200 block of Main Street. It is owned by CoreCivic, and they manage programs out of there. These facilities are both at the end of their life. The Longmont Downtown Authority is really anxious to do something about LCTC because they want to redevelop that area. When the 1.185% sales tax expires, which is 18.5 cents on $100, we're going to replace it with a 5-year sales tax dedicated to modernizing the jail and building an alternative sentence facility. One facility on the jail campus that would house up to 250 people, centralize all the services that we provide. We would run that rather than contract help. We would run that with county employees being paid a decent wage with an interest in the outcomes of what we're doing in the jails in regards to programming for alcohol and substance addiction, programming for mental health needs, that kind of thing. What an alternative sentence facility does is it allows us to run programs like work release and day reporting out of a facility where inmates are then report back in and are housed in a large open dormitory style setting that is accomplished at about $40 a day per person rather than $130 for a hard jail cell. So economically, it's a good return. And it keeps people working in the community. It keeps them paying taxes, keeps them on their own insurance, and hopefully buying milk and diapers and the kind of things they need to do rather than keeping them in jail where they lose their job, they lose their insurance benefits, that kind of thing. And there are a lot of people that are eligible for alternative sentencing. Those programs right now are backlogged, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And so when someone gets a work release sentence, they're either going to wait in the jail to get into the program, or they're going to wait at home on an ankle monitor and not be allowed to leave. It ruins the effectiveness of the programs. We have a lot of people now, through the advice of their attorney, that are opting to do straight jail time rather than do work release because of the issues with the backlogs. So it's not working for us right now. We want to increase the capacity in work release and day reporting greatly, and the ability to deliver programs. And then move everybody out of the jail that reports into the community on a daily basis, like the crew, the work crews, and the people that work in the garden, the people doing work release. Move them all into that alternative facility and free up about 80, 90 beds in the old jail. And then spend some money on the old jail, which needs major remodeling. It's a lot like me. It's an aging structure. And it's having plumbing and electrical issues. It's again, not designed for the inmate population that we're currently holding. This tax will raise $10 million annually, or about $50 million. That is a lot of money. That's why it's not going to come out of the general fund. You don't have the ability to do this. This is a one-time large capital investment that's going to take some help from the taxpayers to make it work. It's sorely needed in our county. We boast about being progressive on these issues, yet Adams County, Weld County, Larimer County, they all have alternative sentence facilities. We don't. So we could reconfigure space in the jail, do a lot more programming and work release and day reporting, and I think run a more humane jail system. This is essentially a summary of the things I just said, but that tax would generate enough money over time, over that 5-year period, to build both facilities or modernize the jail. And also, it can be done in phases. We don't believe we're going to have to bond against it or borrow in order to do this, so we're not going to be paying interest on the money that this would generate. I just throw this slide in to indicate the sort of issues we're facing in our aging jail. In 2001, we were putting about 100 people a year on suicide protocols, trying to prevent them from harming themselves in our jail. Last year, we put 681 on suicide protocols. This year, we're going to put almost 800 people on suicide protocols. When I became the sheriff, 13% of the people in our jail had a diagnosed Axis I mental illness. Today, 45% of the people in our jail have a diagnosed Axis I mental illness. We need to redesign our jail to provide better services, and we need to redesign alternative sentences to get people out of that setting and into a facility in a setting where they can receive better help under less strict and restrictive circumstances. I explained the wait list. From a consultant, wait lists do not work in criminal justice programs. There is a fact sheet available. I passed that out that you all should have. There's also the ability to upload this, and I have postcards with this on there. And I'm available to take questions if you have them.
Sheriff, where will first thank you for the presentation. Where will the alternative sentencing facility be built? Adjacent to the jail?
Yeah, on the jail campus. We have 24 acres there.
Yeah.
So we have space to put it there without a lot of community impact issues.
Right.
Because that population already goes there and that kind of thing. We'll probably have to build some transportation alternatives in with this because we're going to be closing the one in Longmont where a lot of people work. So we'll have to address that. But I think those things are easy. And consolidating and putting everything under one roof is going to save us a bunch of money eventually as well.
Okay. So as you know, 20 years ago, I was a reserve deputy and spent some quality time in the jail and working with alternative sentencing programs. And we were talking about this 20 years ago. I mean, this was a need. A facility like this was needed 20 years ago, and upgrades to the jail were needed 20 years ago. So this is, in my opinion, long overdue, and I think it's time that we support this and get behind it.
Yeah, I have suffered through this issue my entire time, the 16 years I've been the elected sheriff. We continue to be faced with issues with the recession and then a huge fire and then a huge flood, and there was never the capital to fix it. And I think this represents an opportunity. It's not going to be fixed by the time I leave, but I would love to have a plan and the funding source nailed down so that this doesn't continue to be a huge problem for our community. The jail is the linchpin for the justice system. Everybody moves through it, and it's got to be, in Boulder County, it should be humane, it should be modern, and we should be doing the best we can in reference to programming for the people in the system.
Questions?
Let me first start by saying thank you. And 17 years ago tomorrow, something terrible happened, and we're reminded on that day that there are heroes, true heroes out there that will run towards danger. And so thank you, and thank you to Chief, who's out there as well. So can you just address the opioid addiction problem and whether or not, in your belief, you think that has driven some of the mental health issues and some of the additional the occupancy rate you have, the occupancy issue you have in your jail? And frankly, I didn't even know where your jail was. I've not had the displeasure of visiting or the pleasure of working. Yeah. So I looked it up, and for those in the audience that might be interested in a laugh later, there are Yelp reviews on the jail. They're not very positive, which makes me happy that they're not really positive reviews. The food isn't very good, so kudos to you for that. But could you speak to the opioid addiction crisis and whether or not that's had an impact on your jail?
Sure. Yeah, opioids have had an impact on jails across the country, obviously. A lot of people are in jail not because they're addicted, but because they're committing crimes to support their addiction. theft and fraud, and those kind of things are off the chart in regards to supporting those addictions. The other issue that we have is withdrawal in the jail, people that are incarcerated. And we are active on the opioid task force in the state, where the county is very active in trying to make sure we have medicated assistance for people under those circumstances, that people aren't suffering needlessly. They're not going to get better if they have to do that. And we certainly don't want anybody to have a medical emergency and die, during withdrawal in our facility. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge for our medical staff. We are not as impacted in our county as badly as some places in the country where this is absolutely tearing the fabric of their communities apart. But there is a percentage of people in our community that are addicted to usually the first prescription pain relievers and then later heroin.
Right. So thank you again, and fully support this ballot measure, and agree that any investment on alternative sentencing is a wise investment, and probably many, many years past due. So thank you.
So how far does $50 million go to meeting your goals?
It meets our goals. It does a lot. So our building, closing down the other two centers and building a new one, a 46,000 square foot building, and then additions to the exterior of the jail, a new intake and booking area, some administrative space for our staff that has grown in the jail but grown into no space. That's about $30 million to do all that, to build new. And then to remodel old, it gives us a $20 million fund balance. And I'm telling you, things like floors have to come out to replace old electrical and water and sewer. That's where we're getting with the facility. So there aren't very many 30-year-old county facilities left that are still operating in their original condition. So I think it accomplishes everything that we need to do.
I have one question. What types of offenders are eligible for the work release program?
People who are judged by an assessment to not be a danger to the community. The most common I can think of are DUIs, people who commit thefts, that kind of thing. If somebody is evaluated and poses a danger to a victim or the community, they would not be eligible for that. But the most common people you'll see out working on the work crews or out working in the community, then coming back to the jail at night, are most likely DUIs and theft suspects.
And who makes that assessment? A judge?
No. So, yeah, the judge ultimately makes that assessment or makes that sentence through a minimus. But the assessment's done by pretrial services folks who work for community justice services, who use validated tools. One's called the CPAT test, where they assess the person's past, they assess their current state, they look at their history, criminal history, they look at their associates. There's a number of things they look at to make that determination. Then they make a recommendation to the judge, and then the judge sentences them to the program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Rita.
My question was on the $50 million is for capital improvements, and you talked about staff.
Mm-hmm.
So you have people on staff already to fill all the needs, both from a medical or healthcare within and as well as officers. Is that correct, that you have that in your budget? So the $50 million is not going to go for additional personnel?
No, the $50 million is capital, and because it expires in 5 years, we wouldn't use it for ongoing expenses. So we pay CoreCivic a lot of money to run these programs in Boulder, both on Canyon and in Longmont. So that payment can be used to help offset the operating cost. We, the inmates pay a fee to be part of the program. It's a sliding fee based on their eligibility, their employment, that kind of thing.
Their ability to pay.
Their ability to pay. But they pay a fee. That helps offset the operating costs. And then we will have, we have some ongoing fund balance in the offender management fund that will also help offset that cost. So we believe we can operate the facility without any increases in taxes or needed revenue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thanks again, Sheriff, for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate your service to your community. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is reports, questions, and issues from the board. Who would like to start?
Start?
Kevin?
I have no report.
All right. Rita?
I attended on August 29th the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport resident meeting, as well as Sandy Hammerly, Sandy Pennington, and the mayor. We were all there, and we had a great turnout of about 120 residents from both Superior and Louisville. So I just wanted to say that we're going to continue on gathering data about the impact of overflights over Superior and Louisville, and we'll be dividing those individuals that are interested into working groups to gather data about the jets that fly over versus the propeller flight school planes that fly over. And then we'll have a third working group that's going to be actually looking at the regulations and the navigation agreements, the air navigation agreements on easements across and over Rock Creek, Superior, and then also Louisville has their own. So we're going to continue those on, and I know Matt and his staff are going to work on that. But I just wanted to say that there will be further work on that. And then on September 7th, I attended with Alex Arnella from our Public Works Department, the Boulder Area Sub-Regional Transportation Improvement Project, DRCOG, Denver Regional Council of Government. Anyway, that's money that we get from the federal government to use for transportation improvements. And we get to divvy that up amongst the Boulder County-based communities. And our first projects that we're submitting for possible funding from the federal government are projects that deal with Highway 7 improvements and Highway 119, which is the diagonal from Boulder to Longmont, because there's a lot of issues with traffic as well as better transportation, RTD, bus, multimodal types of transportation. So we're submitting 3 projects. 2 of the major ones are for Highway 7 improvements and Highway 119 improvements, and another one is a study. And we're going to submit that to the DRCOG, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, see if we can get those, at least one of those projects approved in the funding for regional projects. And then next year, we'll be actually spending another $20 million within Boulder County for regional community-based transportation improvement projects. So more will come on that as we go forward. And some member of this board will be involved in that, because I will be stepping off of DRCOG, as I will also be stepping off of this board, and my term, I will be resigning on September 30th, because I'm moving out of Superior, which is a bittersweet moment for me to have to say this, because this has been my home for 24 years, and I have enjoyed it thoroughly. But I wanted people to know that I have 2 more board meetings tonight and then September 24th, and then I will be gone from this place, going to another Superior in Arizona. So it's kind of an odd situation, but I will be moving to Arizona at the end of this month. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rita. All right, Sandy?
Well, we are going to miss you. Good luck. At the retreat a couple weeks ago, we were shown graphics of monument signs, and I wanted to see whether or not the board would agree to having CAPS look at those monument signs. Okay,
sure.
Good. So they'll be meeting the 4th Thursday. Went to, Sandy Hammerly and I hosted the first Friday at Del Vecchio's this last Friday from 4:30 to 6:30. And it's an understatement to say it was hopping. So the first thing is mixing up the time. Some mornings for coffee, some evenings for more of a cocktail hour, I think is a good formula. And would suggest we continue to do that. We had I think all the candidates were there. I didn't count them, but there were plenty of candidates there. And then, of course, Sandy and I took regular questions that were not individual candidate oriented. So I really encourage all trustees to, Kevin, I heard you arrived. So Kevin arrived later in the game. So hope that's, when I took that over from Deb Williams, it was more of a individual trustee thing, and then we morphed it into all the trustees, and I suggest any sitting trustees and any new trustees really make a plan to attend those things. They're really fun and they're very informative. Rocky Mountain Airport meeting, it really drove home the need for a large community space for our community, because my understanding is that we agreed to have it out there because we did not have a space big enough to host it. Well, it was basically hijacked, in my opinion. What was supposed to be a time, I thought, for Superior residents and Louisville residents to meet with Rocky Mountain Airport executives ended up being, it was peppered with a lot of pilots and people from the charter companies and from the training companies, and really there was a lot of negativity in that meeting and not enough listening going on. So we need a large size community room in this town, and I hope eventually we'll get it sooner rather than later. And then I did want to respond. We did get an email that documented that the Village Green was originally estimated to be $500,000. The accepted bid on it is $773,000, so that's basically 50% more, and I hope we put a plan into place to figure out about inflation adjustments or how much can go against the $10 million. My belief is absolutely no more than the original $500,000 should go towards the civic space. So anyway, I didn't want to let that just sort of slide under the radar. That's all.
Thanks. Mark?
I don't have any report.
Okay. Sandy?
First, I also want to thank Del Vecchio's Restaurant for being the host for our first Friday on Friday. They did a wonderful job. It's the first time we'd done it there. They were great hosts, and I think everybody enjoyed the food. So hopefully as we continue to do First Fridays, we'll spread it around to other restaurants in town, and hope they will be responding positively, because it was a great opportunity to showcase one of our great small businesses here in town. I want to thank the town's Parks and Recreation and the Superior Chamber of Commerce staff and volunteers for another highly successful Chili Fest. This is one of the showcase events of the town of Superior, and not only do our residents enjoy it, but we have lots of visitors from out of town, and the town staff and volunteers and the Superior Chamber staff really, really do a fabulous job of making us look good. And we couldn't do it without them. Matt, congratulations to your staff for a great job, and Heather also for your staff team. I also want to thank many of our advisory committees who participated at Chili Fest. They come out on a Saturday and spend their day and talk about all the great things we're doing in our town. And in particular, I want to compliment the CAPS Advisory Committee for the painting activity. They were painting squares for a large mural that's going to be down on the bike path. And I painted a square, and I'm a grown adult, and it was hard for me, and I was absolutely fascinated by the diversity of the artwork we got, and they accommodated children as young as 5 or 6 years old, as long as their parents were there, and older folks like me, all ages. And when this thing is all put together, it is going to be truly fabulous. And so I really want to thank CAPS, because that was not an easy task, herding all those cats that day. I also want to remind residents of the Candidate Forum tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. here at Town Hall. It's a great opportunity to come and ask some questions of our 3 mayoral and 6 trustee candidates. It will also be broadcast on Cable Channel 8 and will be available on the website. But it's a great opportunity to ask those new elected officials what's on your mind and how they would respond to questions. Finally, I want to invite residents to participate in our book discussion on Wednesday night at the Superior Bungalow. We have all been asked to read Killers of the Flower Moon, the Osage Murders, and the Birth of the FBI. We will have a professional facilitator there from the library to help guide our discussion, but I'm the town host for it, and I hope we'll see a lot of you there. And that would be it for me.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. On the 29th of August, I attended the Rocky Mountain Airport noise meeting that Rita talked about. On the 3rd of September, Labor Day, attended the Labor Day Parade in Louisville. We took the historic fire truck to Louisville, and our family got to ride in the truck, and it was great. It was our first outing outside of Superior for the newly restored fire truck, and had a lot of nice comments from the community members in Louisville that were seeing it there for the first time. On the 6th, I attended a Mayors and Commissioners Coalition meeting, which we had here at Town Hall, and then also a Metro Mayors Executive Committee meeting at the Denver Chamber of Commerce. Attended the First Friday event on Friday the 7th, and attended Chili Fest on the 8th, and as Sandy said, thanks to the staff and chamber members who always pull out all the stops to make it a great event. I want to thank my family for all their help in the booth, in the mayor booth, including my dad, who's here tonight, and my wife and my 2 sons who helped out in the mayor booth, and Jared Kuffner, who was there the entire time. I think it wore him out. It was a busy day at the mayor booth, so thanks, Jared, for all your help. And congratulations to my wife, Leslie, who got an honorable mention for her salsa in the salsa competition. And thanks to Colin, my son Colin, who just joined the Superior Youth Leadership Council, who was there for the entire event, hauling trash around before he was even introduced or appointed to the council. So thanks for everyone's efforts there. Just a reminder, tomorrow is the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum here at Town Hall, 7 to 8:30 p.m. And that's it for my announcements. Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we are going to host a farewell event for trustees Pennington, Dozell, and Hanson on September 24th from 5 to 7. We're going to take advantage of the work session time we usually do to just invite the community to come down and say thanks for their service and their time on the board and their commitment to the community. So we'll get the word out to residents. We'll have refreshments here, and hopefully it'll be a good send-off since Rita's getting out of Dodge early. So that was it.
Okay, thanks. Town Attorney?
And I have nothing to report.
Thank you. And Phyllis. Okay. All right, that is all. Okay. That is all for reports, questions, and issues. Next is public comment. And for public comment, if you just give a wave that you'd like to come up, I'll signal you to come up as I see hands come up, and just come up and start with your name and address, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. If there's repetitive comments, if you'd maybe consolidate yours and just be respectful of everyone's time. So, yes, Dulcie.
Dulcie Brown, 1404 East Waldona Way. I just want to thank the board for making the decision at the last board meeting to close down Waldona Way. I came home from out of town on Friday evening and saw the barriers up. I had no idea they were already going to be up. I was elated. That extra minute that it took to drive around the block, it was the happiest moment that I've had in I don't know how long. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank all my neighbors who supported us in this happy event. The people in Waldona, the people on Boyero, Idalia, and El Moro, Amherst, Stoneham, Riverbend. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making our lives a lot better on Waldona.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Liza McKenzie, and I live at 1514 East Waldona Way. I'm glad I was here to see the leadership youth candidates because what I feel passionately about right now is the amazing display of leadership that I saw on August 27th, 2018 from our trustees on the board to keep our youth safe. And that was a very, very big decision, and it's been a contentious issue. And Mayor Folsom, this is an election year for you. And I've been thinking, if I was you, I might have tried to push it off, to wait until after the election to make a decision. But you chose to support the little guy, your most vulnerable constituents, the children, over the greater population of people who have benefited from Weldona being open for the past 25 years. And that was brave and admirable, and I really would like to acknowledge that. The cost to close Weldona Way permanently, including emergency access, $40,000 to $80,000, fostering community and healing in a fractured community, priceless. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Inga Marquardt, and I live on Bristol Street, 2192 Bristol Street. And I've been living in Superior now for a little over 2 years. And I'm a very active dog walker, so I'm here to speak for dog lovers in Superior. There is a very nice dog park on the east side of Superior. And I have spoken to other dog lovers and walkers about possibly about asking if it's possible to have a dog park here on the west side of Superior, the corner of McCaslin and Colton, the northeast corner. I think that is called Town 15. I think it is white on your map, and I hope that means that it is not designated for anything as yet. If a dog park were located there, there is already an off-ramp from Colton for access to a small parking lot that might be placed there. There would be a sufficient sized park without conflicting with the existing pavement. That's a walk and bike park that also connects the south and north parts of the town. And there are already 2 access points from Andrew. And it is now not being used. If it's not designated for anything, this would be a possibility to give greater, what should I say, greater appreciation of an open area and still leave it an open area. And so I'm here to see if it's possible, what it takes, what do we need to do as residents to make the council have sufficient information for a considered decision on this. What do we need to do?
I think the best course of action is to have a discussion with our Parks, Recreation, Open Space, ProSAC committee. They are probably
I have spoken to Matt Rarick.
Yes, town staff, yes.
An associate there also.
Okay, so
and
they
suggested.
Yeah, so he's town staff. There's a committee of residents that are all volunteers, and they deal with all things parks and recreation and would I think dog park and potential
so
for.
That's the committee we need.
It's a committee, yes, and we'd be happy to get you the necessary information and get you invited to one of their upcoming meetings and have a dialogue with them about that.
Okay. There is one other minor point. I understand that in Boulder, there's a certificate program that can be used where you can get your dog certified for walking on the paths without leash.
Yes.
Is that possible in Superior as well?
It's certainly possible. I know it's come up as an idea, but we currently don't have that option.
Whom should we discuss that?
Probably the same group. Same group. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
They meet
Yes,
next Wednesday, I think, at 7 p.m.
So-
Next Wednesday, 7
is Debbie DeLue. I live at 1230 South Boyero Court. And I don't like the way that was prematurely decided to close Waldona. It's an important issue to me and my family. I don't like how you didn't acknowledge the comments and went ahead with a vote without further resident input and without further exploration of less drastic ways to address this. Was there any research into the unintended consequences of closing this road? The multiple access into that neighborhood was one of the main reasons I purchased my home. And now you had taken that away from me, and my rights, my feelings about things are totally void. I feel like I'm being punished, denied an access to my home, and I no longer feel part of the neighborhood. I also had to pay a higher price to live on a cul-de-sac. I don't really want my tax dollars going to put another cul-de-sac in on 88th and Waldona. I believe there are currently only 3 other neighborhoods in Superior with only one access point in and out. Now you will force all of the neighbors in those 3 neighborhoods to use Coal Creek. I have to turn left onto Coal Creek. I have to turn left onto Rock Creek. I will not do that. It's too dangerous on Coal Creek and Rock Creek intersection, and I will go up through Akron or Riverbend and use the stoplight by the school, which will just create more traffic up there where kids are crossing. And of course, I want the kids to be safe. I also know that many of you didn't agree that the extra distance is significant for emergency vehicles, but it's when it's your loved one on the line, every minute counts. If you feel that closure is the only way, then close Waldona at the bend, which is partway between the 2 streets. You could put cement posts across that with much less cost than closing off the road entirely. Thank you for listening to me, and please reopen Waldona at 88th. And don't rush us into something without further resident input. Thank you.
Thanks. Additional?
My name is Megan Anderson. I'm at 1325 South Boyero Court. I would like to discuss the issue of the closure of Waldona at 88th. First, the town board cited the following reasons for closing Waldona at 88. 1, the road was a mistake to begin with, so the town was simply righting a wrong. 2, there were concerns regarding safety. And 3, closing it was the only equitable thing to do. All 3 premises or reasons given were false claims. 1, the road was not a mistake to begin with, and Waldona was not simply a road that construction trucks used to build the houses. When I came out to purchase our family home in March of '93, there was nothing built on this end of the development. However, the roads were all paved. There were sidewalks and a sewer and a drainage system well in place. I bought our home off the plans from a Park Homes trailer parked on the corner of 88th and Waldona. The reason that one part of this subdivision was built by Richmond Homes and the other by Park Homes was because the area around South Boyero Court was considered the least desirable area in all of Rock Creek to live at the time. And Richmond Homes didn't want to deal with trying to sell houses so close to 88th and Highway 36. Nonetheless, Park Homes could see the value in building homes in the cul-de-sac and marketed the homes by using these selling features. 1, you are so close to the access to 88 that you can get to Louisville more quickly. 2, you are especially close to the hospital. And 3, you have the benefits of living on a cul-de-sac. Those of us who bought our homes on this court and have stayed for 25 years still value what Park sold us. We were willing to put up with the disadvantages of extra noise from 36 and 88th. All of us have been wakened in the middle of the night to the sounds of ambulances rushing to the hospital or street racing on Highway 36. 5 original couples have stayed for 25 years because these same selling features that Park sold us still matter and have value to us today. We never asked the town of Superior to compensate us for the obvious disadvantages that we agreed to live with when we bought our homes, even when we didn't realize just how noisy Highway 36 could be or when the traffic became heavier. If we could not live with the situation, we knew it was our responsibility to find a more suitable living space to meet our needs. And some of the original owners did just that. They moved. The real reason that Waldona exists is because the original planners of the subdivision could see this area being the most densely populated area in the whole subdivision. Hence, they knew there should be 2 points of entrance to accommodate this highly dense population of houses and homes. Weldona was not a mistake, it was the plan. The mistake was not following through with the plan and putting in appropriate roads for those on Amherst and its adjoining streets. 2, the concern about safety now appears to be somewhat of a farce to me, since we now have all of our kids trekking across to now even busier Coal Creek Street to catch a school bus. I am so angry about this topic that I'm going to save my comments here for another meeting when I have more time to cool off, because safety does matter to me. Number 3, we were told that closing Weldona was the only equitable thing to do. Then we listened to how it would be so unfair to disrupt those on Amherst by putting in a road of their own because it would disrupt their neighborhood. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. And at whose expense did they enjoy their blissful living arrangement, apparently now ours? Now you have no problem disrupting our living arrangements when they were the very reason that Weldona became their through street. And why? Because a through street was never built from Amherst to 88th. Worse, the town has been inviting others to use Weldona as a through street by providing a left-hand turn lane painted into the street, inviting others to enter. We sat and listened to how the town has money to plant trees, shrubs, and put in park benches for the cemetery to honor the dead, but they can't manage to come up with the money for a road for the living. We've supported the skate park, additional parks, all kinds of equipment, sculpture projects for the town center, and various other luxuries. Keeping in mind that adequate roads are the fundamental necessities of a town, I'm beginning to question, I don't think the town has its priorities straight. Last, imagine expressing our concerns about living near a hospital and then being ridiculed and told to stop whining to go buy a defibrillator, and you all heard that. We shouldn't have to discuss what our medical needs may or may not be in a public setting because it is really nobody's business. And to ridicule us and minimize what we value or what our needs may actually be borders on elder abuse. There's an old saying, home is where the heart is. Because of closing Weldona at 88th, I feel violated and penned in. Just as someone came into my home and stole my favorite piece of jewelry or my favorite picture hanging on the wall, you took something away that I valued, something that mattered to me. All 3 reasons the board gave for closing Weldona at 88th were false claims.
Okay.
Good evening. Eric Flores, 1270 South Boyer Court. Excuse me, I'm ill. I'd like to point out the comprehensive plan about travel throughout on Section 2 transportation goals. On policy 8.1I, it stated neighborhood connections. Connect neighborhood using multiple pedestrian, bicycle, and local internal vehicular access, egress routes, and minimize indirect and unnecessary travel. I guess I'm unclear as how this blockage is not violating this piece of the comprehensive plan. And just a question, now that there's this blockage, does that, during the winter season, is that gonna turn, talking in terms of snow removal? I know Weldona is a priority 3. Is there confirmation that's going to get knocked down to priority 4 or maintained by others? I mean, something to consider. I'm also very concerned, this to me is the most concerning piece, is emergency services. I know I've heard comments about it only takes a minute for emergency services, but you know, someone I know someone from the last meeting that I watched, they said there's people in the 60 or over, someone could have a stroke, cardiac arrest. Shouldn't every minute count? I mean, it's just very easy access to get to the hospital instead of having to go around. And then finally, the impression I got from watching the meeting from 2 weeks ago, I believe, this issue is very emotionally charged, and I understand, but I felt that the decision was rushed because of the emotionally charged motivation. And I just don't think that's a basis for making a rash decision. So I am requesting that you reevaluate your decision. I'm sure there's a compromise that we can all live with. I just don't think the blockage it should be the final decision. So, thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments? Yes, sir, in the back. Yes.
I'm Jim Galt. I live at 1340 South Boyero Court, which actually backs on 88th. Is the next, my side yard is on Weldona, and I face on Boyero. So I've got all those experiences from there. I was unable to attend the last board meeting when the decision was made to close Weldona, and I was surprised when I heard the decision, because it seemed to me like it made more sense to, if you were going to close it where the elbow was, up at the top of the hill to the west, for several reasons. One was it seemed like it inconvenienced fewer people. It addressed the issue about the cut-through traffic, and I know that where Weldona hits 88th, there isn't really an area there where people can turn around. So if they come down there, they're going to have to back into people's driveways and those kind of things. Whereas the elbow at the corner there, up at the top of the hill, is already a semicircle. You can turn around easily if that was blocked off just a little bit to the east of that. So I understand. I got an email from some people that were objecting to this decision, asking me to join in that objection. But I'm not being a traffic engineer. There might have been some reasons why that alternative wasn't approved or considered, and I was really came to ask that question because I didn't want to join something without knowing there may be some good reason why that wasn't done, considered, and I just came to ask that question.
Okay. The quick answer to that is it had been tried. It has been tried before, and it was taken out. It was 06, I believe it was. Yeah. So.
I don't think so. No. There was a closure.
There was a closure mid.
At Akron and
Okay.
Coal Creek Drive, right?
Let's continue with the public comment. We appreciate the comment, and we can certainly get you more information on where the exact closure was in the past. But that was one of the pieces of this was definitely part of the discussion.
Okay. Well, I did get an email from you saying that you appreciated my interest and that the decision was different than mine. I'd just like to have somebody, Alex or someone, to explain that to me. I'd appreciate it.
And we'll certainly be happy to have that conversation, just not at public comment.
Okay.
Yep.
So where could I have that?
Any of us, correspond with me, and I can get you in touch with Alex.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Cardi-Mullen. I live at 1250 South Boyero Court. 2 weeks ago, I attended this meeting and listened to over an hour of very compelling reasons to increase safety, limit cut-through traffic, and to keep access along Weldona. Of course, we all want safety and less cut-through traffic. None of us want that, okay? Want the cut-through traffic. I'm with my Weldona neighbors on that one, okay? I believe all of us also want access. Access doesn't have to come at the expense of safety or traffic. Mr. Galt just explained one possibility. Somebody else explained another. You probably don't realize this as board members, but by not acknowledging those who spoke on both sides of the issue and by taking what seemed like a pretty rushed and premature vote on an extremely emotional issue and an emotionally charged room, your vote caused a lot of outrage in our community. And I know a couple of you said, really? And I'm like, how can you not realize that? People are furious. They're outraged. They're insulted. You heard some of that tonight. It's like a wildfire of anger. And that's not what our neighborhoods are about. We're here to work together. I think that's what your impression is to do too, is to help solve things. And so I'd like to see that happen. I ask you to please consider revisiting your decision to close off Weldona at 88th, and please enforce, not ignore, our town comprehensive plan, which was stated earlier in transportation. It says connect our neighborhoods using multiple pedestrian, bicycle, and local internal vehicular access, egress routes, and minimize indirect and unnecessary travel. throughout Superior ensure safe, effective, and direct access between all neighborhoods of Superior for vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians. If you open Weldona at 88th, you are enforcing the comprehensive plan and creating this access. You're also honoring the big survey we all did last year, and there were 53 that said to keep Weldona open and 24 to close it, and it's closed. If you closed Weldona at 88th, you would align with 2 out of the 3 trustees that served on the Transportation and Safety Committee that bring you that research to keep Weldona and 88th open and look for other options. If you opened Weldona at 88th, one solution you might consider is if you, besides the cul-de-sac on the elbow, is if you installed a vertical motion sensitive gate like you do in parking lots or on the entryways to 36, okay, it would be motion activated. It would be really inexpensive. It would be halfway down Weldona. It would lower when you needed pass-through traffic, and you'd get rid of half the trips. So half the group would go out Boyero and Daly would go out 88th, and the other 2 cul-de-sacs would use the other one. And if you needed to, you could go through. Buses could come through. Emergency vehicles could come through. You could come through. Your visitors could come through. The mail delivery people could come through. If you opened Weldona at 88th, okay, you'd calm down the delivery trucks and the trash collectors. They're not too happy right now. The mail carriers who are on all timed routes, it would be safer for everybody, especially those of you that are on Weldona. They wouldn't be rushing down there to get in and out. You'd also increase safety for school children by reinstating their bus stop. Instead of having to walk 1 block, they now have to walk 4 or 5, depending on where they live. Okay, so if you installed this, if you would just align with maybe 21st century smart neighborhood designs by having connectivity and permeability, connectivity is connecting neighborhoods, permeability is the access, that would be great. You take the pressure off and cool off the anger and resentment, as some residents feel weren't heard. And if you opened it again, you'd renew our trust in you to continue to process an important town issue rather than hold on to a permanent decision. Since it's temporarily closed, will you at least resurvey the neighborhood to see if they like it? Maybe we will. And address any unintended consequences, like the school bus stop being moved, before installing a permanent closure. That's something I ask. Being good leaders makes a difference. When leaders approach the conversation in a defensive or predetermined way, it shuts people down. It shuts them off. But if they come in with 2 ears wide open and with a humble mind, results can be remarkable. Often people are frustrated or critical because they don't feel heard. So when leaders and decision makers like yourselves put themselves in a space of listening, then thinking about solutions, tension and hostility shift to a tenacity to find a path forward with everyone. That's what I ask of you tonight, okay? Yep. Be a good leader, listen, bring neighbors together, and let's look for other options together to create safety, lower traffic, and keep access on Weldona. Options that everybody can get behind, and then reopen Weldona for a healthier, safer, and happier neighborhood. Thank you.
William Anderson, 1325 South Boyero Court. I was the last speaker 2 weeks ago, and in the interest of time, I was going to send questions. I had no clue you guys were going to vote, and it surprised me. If you remember, about a year ago, after the survey, we got together, the town, and we discussed the results of the survey, and Kathy mentioned that. One of the things that I pointed out to the board was that there was no option presented to the folks in our area, especially the people at Weldona, to close Weldona at Akron. And I thought that was something that had Weldona folks had that option, I think you would have had a situation where the folks would have still had access to 88th, and they would have closed off Weldona to the through traffic. I thought, well, it's not as good as keeping it open, but at least you would have had more neighborhood consensus that, well, the folks in Weldona got the through traffic issue taken care of, and we, including people on Weldona, still had direct access to 88th. One of the things that Mr. Galt mentioned was the reason, and you guys mentioned, or you guys, the town, not the town manager and the public works director gave the reason on the third paragraph of a notice that went out on August 27, 2018. This is what it said. In 2006, at the direction of the town board, a temporary closure at Weldona Way at Akron Street was implemented. After a 3-month trial period, the town board decided to remove the closure since there was little decrease in traffic volume and speeds on Weldona, while traffic on Coal Creek Drive and 88th Street increased significantly. Well, virtually everyone on Boyero Court leaves and goes to 88th immediately. So had you closed it after that at Weldona at 88th, you would have seen a higher traffic volume because everybody, when you close it at 88th, that's on Weldona, or that's on Boyero Court, then has to go on Weldona. So the problem with this is you never explained why physically you couldn't close it at Akron. There is no reason physically you can't close it at Akron. You said in here it didn't solve the problem. Well, I'm thinking, well, do you think that it's going to solve it now if you close it at 88th when it didn't solve the problem at Akron? The fact is, had you, and this is what I think I'm going to recommend, do a temporary closure at 88th for a year through all the seasons to see if we can find unintended consequences. Then move it to Akron and close it a year to find out, because first of all, the Weldona folks are going to have no through traffic, so I don't see why they would have a problem. First, trying it out at 88th, then trying it at Akron for a year. Go through all the seasons, find out all the problems, then get back together and talk about it. As long as I think they, I'm not, and this is not what I was advocating. I wanted openness, because whenever you close a street, traffic on adjacent streets goes up. So a lot of this stuff in the end of the third paragraph, well, that's a consequence of closing a street, traffic goes up. But I think it would have been worse. Virtually everybody on Boyero does not go on Weldona, we go on 88. So it would have made it even worse had you closed it. So I would like you to consider temporary 1 year at 88th, and then do a 1 year up at Akron, and then come back and get with the residents and see what they think. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. One, and then you. Nick. Jenny, hold on 1 second. She was coming up, and I was putting you on deck. You're next.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Lynn Geisinger. I met some of you recently at an event or two in town. I am the candidate for RTD board for District O. I'll be replacing Chuck Sisk. I am unopposed, so as long as my sons vote for me, I will be replacing Chuck Sisk. And I mostly came tonight just to introduce myself. I live at 3895 Cloverleaf Drive in Boulder, and have been involved in alternative transportation issues for many years. I was an attorney for a number of years, taught land use planning and local government, including transportation issues at the law school. More recently, I own a business that works with cities around the country, including Seattle, Cambridge, Denver, Boulder, Tucson, Anchorage, a number of cities, to promote their walking and biking and transit facilities. And I've been chair of the Cities of Boulder's Transportation Advisory Board, and now I'm on the Commuting Solutions Board with Heather and others in this area and in the county. And the District O is, it covers all of Superior and Louisville up through a piece of Longmont, Lyons, and up into the mountains, as well as all of Boulder. I am looking forward to working with the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition and with each of the local governments and the constituents to represent the Northwest Corridor and creating more access and greater service. And you can find out more about what I do at lynn4withthedigit.rtd.com, and please feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions, or if you have any questions tonight, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. We appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much for the introduction. All right, Jenny, you're up.
Hi, Jenny Lane, 1349 South Weldona. And first, I just want to thank you for your decision 2 weeks ago. And I have heard a lot of comments about the adjustment and how this has affected a lot of residents in our neighborhood. Some positively, some have said negatively. I think perhaps what I'm hearing from a lot of the Boyer residents is they feel like they weren't included. They feel like they did not have enough information about what happened. And perhaps that can continue for a lot of you since it is closed. I think that since the board did decide, make a decision, that we need to respect that. And if there are if there are problems afterwards, such as there have been intersections that have been brought up as problems, those can be addressed separately. However, I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but we've been harassed all weekend by a certain group of residents. I don't know exactly where they're all from. I know a couple of them are from Boyero. They've had to call the police on people. We are a community, and I really hope that the people on Boyero know that we do care about them. We do. And if there are questions that need to be answered, I'm sure you guys would answer it, but whoever is harassing us to please stop with the verbal abuse and riding up and down the streets constantly on purpose. It's an adjustment that I didn't think would have that reaction so quickly. I'm sorry. We've tried many things over the years to fix our street. We've tried the closure at Akron. I remember that, and walking up there, people literally drove over the sidewalk to get around the barriers because they were so mad. And I don't think this is something that is that serious. I do recognize that you guys like going out to 88th Street, but it was very content after school today. There was so little traffic. It was so quiet. And I know that you guys don't think that we care about you, but we do. And we've never come up to your block to harass you because you like going out to 88th Street. And I hope that you will, in time, get used to it. I don't think it's something that needs to fracture our community any further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tamara Palmer, 1270 South Boyero Court, addressing, I guess, the very popular heated topic of the evening. I think it's a broad characterization about harassment happening to citizens, and I don't think this is something that we want to fracture the community. But as someone who's worked in healthcare and who has lost family members because of minutes, I think emergency access is the greater issue here. It's not just convenience. I think that's getting miscategorized, that we just want to be able to quickly get over to 88th and hurry on with our day. But in timing it, there is approximately a 3-minute difference. And when you think about brain and heart health, 3 minutes makes a huge difference. I don't think anyone wants children to be in danger, but we want people to have the access that they purchased their home for. And I have seen several U-turns happening. Every time I'm driving or walking my dog, I see U-turns, dangerous U-turns happening because people are still going up to 88th thinking they can get through. Maybe they think they can get through the barriers. And at the end of the day, when you bought a house on Weldonia, you knew that you weren't buying a cul-de-sac. And the feeling that it's now being made into a cul-de-sac, which is still not safe. There's still people backing out. Your children shouldn't necessarily be playing in the street. So I think emergency access is really something that needs to be really considered here because those minutes matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Laura.
Hello, my name is Laura Skwajenski. I'm a candidate for town trustee, and I live at 3652 Castle Peak Ave. I've been extremely active in listening to residents on both sides of the Weldona closure, having toured Weldona with multiple residents, thanks to some of you here, to see firsthand the numerous signs as well as the volume and speed of traffic. I've also talked for hours with residents on both sides to discuss concerns and potential options, and I really want to thank them for taking the time to explain their rationale to me when I'm not even on the board. I'm commenting tonight, though, to echo the comments made via email by Planning Commission Vice Chair Lisa Ritchie, that I don't believe this decision was made in an effective manner. Public hearings are not an ideal forum to collaboratively develop compromise between differing opinions, simply because of the lack of back and forth. It's really frustrating for residents to speak their opinions without being able to engage in dialogue or even have much acknowledgement of their time in coming here with well-researched comments and significant emotion. I believe this forum contributed to the animosity between neighbors, as it was a very different discussion at the August 1st Friday event hosted by trustees Pennington, Dozal, and Hammerly, where there was significant back and forth dialogue. In contrast to the public comment at the last board meeting, I was very impressed by the engagement around Original Town with the walking tour and workshop last month. Residents had the opportunity to come together in roundtable discussions to truly listen to each other and respond to concerns with compassion. Maybe it's not too late for similar meetings to be held with residents in the Weldona area, particularly as it's clear from tonight's board meeting that there will continue to be debate up until the closure is made permanent. I understand that some of the residents in the area have been reaching out to try to mend the relationships between the two groups, and I really applaud these efforts. I would encourage the board not to take immediate action based on the comments tonight, which I believe will set a dangerous precedent for the board to immediately reverse decisions. But now that the temporary closure is up, I do think it's a good idea, from what I heard earlier, to see how it goes, what impacts there are on the traffic volume, so that we're working from data rather than predictions, as we were at the last meeting. However, I really want to see the town foster collaborative engagement sessions for the residents to potentially identify compromise solutions, but most importantly, to rebuild community and ensure that residents on both sides feel that they're being heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Dalton.
Hello, my name is Dalton Vallette. I live at 912 East Carval Place, and like Laura, I am running for town trustee. I really want to say thank you all so much for coming out here and engaging in civil discourse on this issue regarding Weldona. I personally do not live on Weldona, but I have met with a lot of people on Weldona and Boyero and other streets, and I think this is a very important issue that shouldn't be taken lightly. I do agree with what Laura said earlier. I think it would be a dangerous precedent if we were to reverse course right now, but I think we should absolutely see what a trial run with the barriers up right now would be like, to see how the traffic is impacted in that area. And most importantly, I think no one should ever feel unsafe or threatened in their home and their community. And on a bit more optimistic note, I had the fortune of having a booth at the Chili Fest, and I had a Superior suggestion sign. And some of the top suggestions that I had from residents were to have composting sites added throughout the town. And I think this is absolutely something that we should look at in order to embrace environmental reforms throughout the town and make sure that we're living in a green and eco-friendly environment. And lastly, one of the topics that was addressed before public comment was regarding the budgets for the sheriff's office and a necessity to add greater funds to rebuilding and renovating the jail cells there for Boulder County. And I believe it's an absolute necessity to have modern and humane infrastructure proposals. My father personally works in mental health and has dealt with the opioid crisis and high rises of suicide rates. And we're very fortunate in our community to not live in an area that has been ravaged by the opioid crisis. But we absolutely need to have humane establishments and modern establishments for people, even if they are incarcerated. because no matter what, even people in prisons deserve some level of humanity. And in closing, I would really like to thank Trustee Dozal for serving us, and I am applauding you and your dedication to the board. It will be sad to see you go on such short notice, and I'm very excited to be attending the trustee forum tomorrow, and hopefully some of the trustee candidates will be able to live up to your valiant service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Gladys?
Gladys Forshey, 404 South 3rd Avenue. Excuse me. I have a prepared statement to read. I am here as a candidate regarding 2018 Town of Superior, Boulder County, Colorado municipal election. As a candidate, I'm entitled to free speech. Town residents need to know that the League of Women Voters is not a free speech forum tomorrow night. I have rebelled as a candidate regarding that issue, using my past voluntary experience and have included you as a town board in those emails of such no free speech scenario. Again, the Town of Superior residents, the League of Candidate Forum tomorrow night is not free speech.
Okay, thank you. Any additional public comment? All right, to close out the public comment section, I'll just make a couple of comments about some of the comments that we received this evening. I imagine some of the other board members might want to as well. Regarding the closure of Weldona, appreciate both sides' comments tonight, and we've received probably an equal, if not greater number of emails also reflecting the same. We have discussed this matter for a long time. I personally don't feel it was rushed. I approached this decision with an open mind and really did not know how I was going to vote until the end. And I wish there had been a decision available that would make everyone happy. It's not a fun position to be in, to have to make a decision that you know is going to upset people. And that's hard. And we don't like being put in that position, but that's what we're elected to do, and that's what we've got to do sometime. And to that end, I think the public needs to respect the difficult position that we're in and respect decisions that are made. I have decisions thrusted, we all have decisions thrusted on us all the time, that things that we don't like. And we have to respect those decisions and respect each other. We are in a community, a loving and caring community. And it really burns me up to hear that people are being harassed and intimidated in Superior, Colorado, the greatest place, one of the greatest places to live and raise a family. I mean, that's pretty sad. And we need to get beyond that. So we do need to let this work. We need to take the extra time and let this work itself out and see how it works and be respectful in the process. Others?
Just two additional comments. Some of the emails we received were about some trustees that appeared to have had, or members up here that had, were not deliberating, that were reading from speeches. Sometimes we come into these meetings, this just as you all are human, and sometimes we hear nerves when you come to the podium. You hear nerves in our voice too. And sometimes we will have notes written in front of us so we don't sound like knuckleheads on TV. That doesn't mean that we didn't deliberate. And if somebody is looking at those notes, please understand that they hear every single voice and opinion. We read every email. Second, in terms of how we could have better engaged the community, there are always ways to improve engagement of the community. I think I was most troubled by people that had attended the meeting but didn't realize that we were going to vote. Because I personally feel like we said that so many times that we were going to vote, and I so apologize. And we've worked on our agendas to try to make it really clear that, we're not using code words like Anderson or Zaharias. We're putting in maps, and we're saying we're considering this, and we're doing better linkage. And So we'll continue to be better around that. And that was the one piece that troubled me, I think, the most, that people didn't realize that in fact we were going to vote. And in terms of engaging the community in some roundtable type format, I don't like the fact that the 7 of us are raised up a couple feet and we're sitting 15 feet away from you. It's not the way that any of us would design this boardroom today. We would design circular tables. We'd be sitting out there with you in the community. But spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to redesign this room would not be a good use of time. But this is a conversation that we are having. You may send us emails. Most of us, if not all of us, have our personal cell phones on our websites or on our Facebook pages. Email us, contact us. If it's not a quasi-judicial process, and this was not the closing of Weldona, we could talk about it in the grocery store. If you see me in the grocery store, stop me. Let's talk about it. My personal cell phone is on my Facebook page. Feel free to give me a ring or Facebook friend me or do whatever you need to do, or email us officially at Town Board. But like Clint said, I'm going to get on my bike a few times over the next few days. The weather's going to be great, and ride around Weldona. So if you see me, come out and offer me a cup of coffee, or if it's after 5, a glass of wine, and PM. And we'll talk about it. But I think we do need, this was a decision. It was a hard decision. We all didn't agree, but I know we all support the decision, and then we need to look at the data and see how, see how things come. So thank you. And thank you for those that came again. Wow, some endurance there. So thank you for coming again.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other comments, Mark?
So I'd like to echo that. Thank you to all the community members who came out and spoke tonight. Thank you to all the community members who came out and spoke to us, who sent us emails. We received an enormous amount of emails, both pro and against this decision. It was a very hard decision, but each and every one of us up here on the board takes representing each and every one of us here in the community very seriously. None of us live on Weldona. None of us live on one of the cul-de-sacs that are off of Weldona. But we're trying to do our best here to represent the needs of the community, and we're trying to do what we think is in the best interest of the community. This is one of those decisions, and we talked about it during our deliberations at the last board meeting, that we knew that regardless of how we voted, we were going to make half of the residents in this neighborhood really upset. This was going to be a drastic decision that was either going to change the nature and character of this neighborhood or keep it the same in a way that, for the people who were complaining about the status quo, was absolutely unacceptable. So, we were truly stuck between a rock and a hard place. And here, we were looking at the data, listening to the residents' concerns, and trying to do what we believed was right. But absolutely, there is no place for bullying, for harassment. If this is a decision that you disagree with, you need to direct your ire at the board, take it out on us on election day. But absolutely, you cannot take it out on your neighbors, because your neighbors didn't make this decision. The decision was made by the board. We bear the responsibility for that decision, and we're supposed to be accountable for that decision. So please, we need to heal as a community. We need to be respectful for our neighbors, to our neighbors, and if there is bullying, if there is harassment, please, we've got Sergeant Chamberlain here. It just has absolutely no place. You can't take the law into your own hands. You can't harass your neighbors. And if you don't feel safe, please call the police, call the authorities. That just absolutely needs to stop immediately. There's just no place for it.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any other comments? Okay, thanks again for everyone coming tonight and speaking. We appreciate your time and letting us know both sides of what's going on. So thank you very much. All right, we're going to continue now with presentations. We've got Heidi Ganal here to talk about Fair Maps Colorado. Welcome, Heidi.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see some friendly faces. Thank you for all you do for the town. I live on El Dorado Circle, and I'm an elected statewide official at University of Colorado Regent. But I'm also very passionate about something else this fall, and that's gerrymandering. I'm one of the co-chairs for the Fair Maps Colorado initiative, which is Amendment Y and Z. There's 2 amendments because of the one initiative per ballot issue rule in Colorado. So one is for legislative reform and one is for congressional reform. With the new census around the corner and dramatic growth set to give Colorado an 8th congressional seat by 2022, Fair Maps Colorado knows now is the time to improve our system. It's a very critical issue going into this next census, as we will likely add a congressional district in Colorado. So what are the issues right now? Well, right now, politicians pick their voters in Colorado and around the country. And there's been a swell of people around the country putting forward ballot initiatives like this that are trying to make redistricting more fair. Why should we care about more redistricting? Because the more competitive our districts are, whether it's statewide districts or federal districts, the better candidates that are going to come out of it. The more competitive it is, the more likely it is that parties that are not in the majority can have a chance at winning too, whether it's Libertarian, Green Party, et cetera. So that's why I'm passionate about this. And the cool thing about this initiative, everyone, is that leaders from both sides of the fence have gotten together to work on this. Both party chairs support it. Over 100 different organizations in Colorado from all sides of the political spectrum support it. And I think it's one of the neatest things I've been involved with in Colorado since I've gotten involved in politics, which is not too long, but the idea that we can all agree on something and work together and get this across the finish line is really valuable these days. The full legislature at the state level voted to put this through onto the ballot so that we didn't have to petition it on, so 100-0. The other important thing to know is that this is a constitutional amendment, so we have to get 55% of the vote in the fall. Not many ballot initiatives have done that over time, so it's very important that we educate our community members, our friends, our family about this important issue and get everyone to vote yes on Y and Z. I wanted to answer any questions that you had about what's different about this and why this is something you should support or not support. So I'm going to open it up rather than keep talking about it. Yes.
I understand what's wrong with the current system, but I do not understand why you think this will work better.
Sure. So the way amendments Y and Z work are they create balanced independent commissions. So it's 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 4 unaffiliateds. And if another party rises in stature and becomes large, they can replace those. So it's actually the first largest party and the second largest party, and then unaffiliateds. Then there are very clear criteria for map drawing and prohibitions on gerrymandering. And one of the directives is to protect communities of interest in cities, towns, and counties so that you don't get these crazy, where the word comes from, gerrymandering with the tail. The other thing that's important is to direct commissions to maximize the number of competitive districts. Right now in Colorado, I heard a stat the other day that said only 9% of the districts in Colorado actually ever swing one way or the other. So in my mind, that's not very competitive. And my hope is that we can come up with a better, more fair way, and we believe that we have done that with this ballot initiative. The other thing to know is that of the 4 Rs, 4 Ds, and 4 Us that are selected, the first 6 seats are filled via lottery. So anyone can apply. There are certain restrictions, like if you're going to apply as an unaffiliated, you have to have been unaffiliated for 5 years. So there's lots of checks and balances in this. And then the second set of folks on the commission are filled by a retired judge panel that work to reflect Colorado geographically and demographically, to kind of fill in the gaps after that. There are still many checks and balances to take it to court if we need to, but the whole point of this effort is to keep it out of the courts and keep it in the hands of the voters and the folks that are putting together the commission. The initial maps are drawn by nonpartisan legal staff and with input from commissioners and the public. Anyone can submit a set of maps, anyone, and the commission will review those maps. There's a lot of guidelines for the adoption of the staff map in the event of a deadlock, but the other neat thing about this is there are very robust ethical and transparency guidelines. So commissions and staff are subject to open meetings, open records, and other sunshine laws. and there must be 3 hearings in each congressional district, including hearings on the Western Slope, Eastern Plains, and Southern Colorado. That's required. And then there's a 72-hour waiting period before map adoption by the commission. So literally, you guys, they've done about 60 meetings between all those involved on this effort to try and punch holes and see if there's any way to rig the system or for one party to have an advantage over the other. And I really, truly believe with all my heart and why I'm spending so much of my time on this effort that this is the best possible solution we could come up with everybody agreeing to it. Perfect is the enemy of the good. There's always going to be some way to improve, but I think this is the best possible chance we've got.
How are the legislative districts and congressional districts currently drawn? And in the event that Amendment Y and Z are unsuccessful, when would that redrawing of the districts happen again? And would it be under the previous system? And how exactly does that work?
Sure. So 2022 is when the next maps will be drawn. So it would be under this new system if the law passed. The census is in 2020. Is that right? It's late. Yeah. So right now, the drawing of state legislative districts is overseen by a commission of 4 legislative leaders, 3 appointees from the governor, and 4 appointees from the Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court, with no guaranteed seats for unaffiliated voters, which is obviously becoming one of the largest block of voters in the state. The 100-member General Assembly oversees the drawing of the 7 congressional districts. It usually ends up in a lot of partisan bickering. You guys have seen this, and most of the time it ends up in court, which is what we're trying to avoid.
And so I understand that this new Amendment Y and Z is designed to avoid the appeal to the court to challenge the districts. In the event that there is some sort of roadblock or challenge to this, is the remedy also through the court system to redraw this if this doesn't work?
It is, but there are many, many more checks and balances in place to prevent that from happening. The chances of it going to court are going to be a lot less with this system.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the board?
Thanks, everyone. I'll hope you support amendments Y and Z. Yes, on Y and Z. It's got a little click
Yes.
to it.
Thank you, Heidi. Heather Craycraft, Superior Chamber update. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Trustees, town staff. On behalf of the Superior Chamber of Commerce, many of you echoed what I would like to share as a phenomenal effort towards Chili Fest this past weekend. And just wanted to give you, because I like to share some of the numbers with you for the 18th edition of Chili Fest, and many of us remember it when it was in our younger days. But for the 18th, we had over 60 businesses involved in their booth space. Obviously, we can't move the curbs, so we're definitely at a maximum there, which is very exciting, and I think everyone has given us great feedback on their participation. We had 5 restaurants participate in our restaurant row, and then to the 6th to be named, which happens to be a lot of these wonderful uniformed individuals behind us. Rocky Mountain Fire competed in our restaurant row competition and served over 250 gallons of chili, which is pretty phenomenal across really a regional effort with our restaurants and our fire men and women. So thank you very much. We also had 2 bands this year for the first time that represented local, both maybe a staff person in that first band from the town staff, and then the second one was a competitor that had been cooking chili for many years and was excited to get his band up there. And then we had over 10,000 regional visitors to the event, and really I like to tell people how much this event really brings the town of Superior to a highlight. We do have competitors that travel in from across, a regional, statewide effort, and a few cross state lines to compete in the chili part of the afternoon. So just wanted to say thank you to, as you already have, but to the town staff. Katie Rummel led many of us down that path in a very well done effort, and to the whole staff. We had a good time, and thank you very much for continuing that on our event calendar.
Great. Thank you, Heather. Appreciate everything. It was a great event. Yes. Thank you. All right, next is item number 3, consent agenda. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Laces, second by Trustee Ryan. All those in favor? Consent agenda passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, next is item number 4, adoption of a resolution approving a member to the Open Space Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one vacancy currently on OSAC. We have 4 applicants. 3 were interviewed tonight. 1 was interviewed on August 27th. We have ballots that the town clerk is passing out to the board. You will vote for one candidate. The candidate that receives the most votes will be appointed to the vacancy.
It's great that we have so much interest in OSAC. We had
Right,
a couple of vacancies for a while, and now we have more applicants. So good job on leadership there.
Okay, so I'll start reading these. First one is Peter. Marcy. Marcy. Peter. Marcy. And Peter.
Who saw that coming?
Okay, we need a rock, paper, scissors. How do we do that?
Are they both here?
It's 3 and 3.
Who's here?
Because Chris isn't here.
Well.
How do we handle
You
that?
can either re-vote. We can do another ballot, or
Can we
somebody
continue this until the next meeting when Trustee Hansen's here to break the tie?
I think
we can do that as well.
I think that would be probably the most logical, since
Okay.
I don't know any other way to handle
Okay.
that. So. All right, thank you all for your interest, and we will be back next meeting to hopefully get a member on OSAC.
What I want to say here, the intent of this whole process, when the advisory committee rewrite happened and all that kind of stuff, is that we create a queue of people. So whoever doesn't get it this next time should be first in the queue to get it when a vacancy happens, at least consulted. They can come back again and all that kind of stuff. But too often what happens is the one who doesn't get it feels rejected and doesn't ever come back. And that is, we need to bring them into the fold and encourage attendance at the meetings as a non-voting participant, and then we've got ready talent to assume a vacant position. So that's the way it was intended to work.
And the other thing is, just because you're not an actual member of the committee doesn't mean you can't participate in the meetings. Which I find it odd that when people come and present themselves as a candidate for a position, then like Sandy was saying, you don't see them again. That doesn't mean you can't participate. You know, it's not just those 9 people or how many ever there are on there. And I've always thought that the committee should be expanded in that there's more people that attend them, you know, and participate in them. Not necessarily more voting members, but to have greater participation at that level. So I'm disappointed that we can't come to a decision tonight, particularly when one of the candidates is actually still sitting here in the room and the others are not. So.
Okay. I think those are good suggestions. I think a queue for future applicants is a good idea if the board is in agreement with that, and also agree that people should continue participation because things come up and there's always vacancies. So the persistence will pay off in getting a position.
Just one clarification for next meeting. Would you like all 4 considered, or just the 2 that had the top votes tonight?
I think just the 2, because otherwise we could have the same situation.
Okay.
All right. We're on to item number 5, discussion of Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District ballot measure. Now, before we start, Trustee Lasis has to recuse himself for discussions involving Rocky Mountain Fire because of his firm has representation by the fire district. So before we start, I'd like to have a a brief discussion by the board on the topic of taking positions on ballot initiatives, because our board has had what I believe is an informal policy of hearing about ballot initiatives, but not taking sides as a board. I mean, individually we certainly can, but as a board. And it seems like on this one there's a desire among some to have the board take a side. So I'd like for the board to revisit this idea of, are we going to do that? And if we are, that's fine. I personally believe we should be doing that, but that's separate from this agenda item. So to open this agenda item, I'd like to have Trustee Lasis in the room for at least that piece of it. And then when we get going to Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District ballot measure, he'll recuse himself. And then I would like to hear a presentation on the ballot measure and just kind of go through our normal agenda item at that point. So,
Mr. Chairman, I am sorry to interrupt the proceedings, but there is no agenda item for Rocky Mountain to be heard on this agenda item. You have public comment on your consent agenda. You have public comment on non-agenda items. This doesn't fall into either one, and so we are asking that we have an opportunity to participate in this discussion.
Yes, and you will. This is an agenda item, and we have public comment during agenda items.
Perfect.
So you
Thank
will
you.
absolutely have opportunity for comment. So yes. But so to start the discussion, I'd like to hear from board members as to where we want to take this, whether we want to basically hear about the ballot item like we did from Heidi Ganal and Sheriff Pelley. We heard about the ballot measures, but we did, as a board, did not take a position.
So I think, so having that general conversation maybe is a good idea before we talk about the specific ballot measure proposed by Rocky Mountain Fire. When you contrast Weldona, right, even though the vote for Weldona was split, but those that were on the minority decision are supportive of the board decision, and that's what you do when you're part of an organization. When you talk about a proposed ballot measure, I kind of feel like we'd be putting somebody that was in the minority in a very difficult position to be supporting a ballot measure that they personally didn't support. That might even go beyond the community, because it's one thing to say, well, I'm again using that Weldona example. I'm very supportive of the board's direction, and it was a difficult decision, and the emails I'm responding to have been, I'm supportive of the board decision, and that's how I start any response. If it was a proposed ballot measure, so I don't think I was participatory to the conversation around the informal decision to really not take a board position. I see why that was there, because if it was not a unanimous decision by the board, putting the minority person in the very difficult position of having to support something that they don't support, or potentially saying, I don't actually support that, despite the fact that the board issued maybe a statement or a position they were. So that's why I was interested to have the conversation, because it's worthy of having the conversation. It's different than just a regular agenda item about closing a street or investing in a pickleball court. It's potentially longer lasting.
Sure. So are you in favor of wanting the board to take positions on ballot initiatives?
If there is a unanimous decision, yes. If there's not a unanimous decision, if there's one person on the board that says, I don't think we should, then I think that one person's voice needs to be heard.
Either way.
Either way. For or
Okay.
against.
Okay.
Right. Personally, but when you suggested a dialogue, I thought it was a good suggestion for a dialogue.
I like that suggestion. So thank you. Okay.
I think that's a really good point, and it's well taken, because, number one, not all ballot measures are created equal, right? There are some that are going to be absolute no-brainers that are going to have wide turnout. Like when we had a ballot measure, should the town opt out of the Senate Bill 157, whatever, to consider a municipal broadband initiative, something like that. We had 90% of the voters' approval, as opposed to something where it's going to be more political. We have a nonpartisan board here, and I'm certainly reluctant to have the board wade into things, particularly when they could be, partisan issues. However, I do think as leaders in the community, people look to the board for guidance. They look for us for influence. And, if we can provide a service, like, for example, with Heidi Ganal's presentation tonight, personally, I don't have the information right now to know enough about Amendment Y and Z as proposed. But based on the presentation that she gave tonight, it certainly seems like something that I would consider supporting. Sometimes with these ballot measures, they're kind of the last things that I make up my mind on, right? Because maybe they're you just don't have the time to actually spend. So, I question whether we're actually going to have the ability to address, all the requests that we might get to consider certain things. But, I think on a case-by-case basis, I don't want to be an absolutist about anything and say, under no circumstances should we ever consider this. I like giving the board the flexibility to consider things on a case-by-case basis. But I think, to Trustee Ryan's point, to the extent that there is any particular board member who has any reservations about that issue, they should have absolute veto power, and then the board does not take a position at all, because we don't want to have 6 or 5 on the board, and then all of a sudden the 1 or 2 members who voted against something are now couched in the, oh yes, the town of Superior is in favor of amendment whatever. So.
Yeah. Okay. Others?
I feel fairly strongly that pretty much the way Mark said it is, if we feel strongly as a board, unified, that we should take a ballot issue, yeah, we can do it. But as Kevin said, if there's even one member of the board who vetoes it, that we should not do it. My general feeling is that it's our obligation to try and make sure that our voters have the information they need if it particularly affects them. And the ballot initiative that Heidi Ganal just talked about, yes, that absolutely impacts our residents, but not in the way tax-related issues. I'm trying to think of another issue that might be directly impacting us, but it needs to really be directly impacting us and has a financial impact on our residents. And so for me, I really think that the right thing for us to do is, rather than to actually vote on or to endorse a ballot issue, is to give the information that we feel is relevant for voters to make a decision, but to not come down on one position or another.
This particular issue is different from any I have faced in 8.5 years. Generally, I agree with Kevin. What happened in 2012 was exactly what you said. Because people faced election and because of 9/11, there was a desire to support the then Rocky Mountain Fire mill levy request of eight total mills, and it was unanimous. And if you asked anybody privately, at least half the board personally voted against it because...
Sandy, can I just stop you there? I'm going to recuse myself from any discussions related to Rocky Mountain Fire District. My law firm represents the district. Two of my colleagues are here today, so to the extent that you're...
Let me couch it in general terms then. Let me start over. So we've been down this path, right? And I actually was the driving force behind saying it's inappropriate to take positions, largely because there's always an election happening, and part of this board is always under election pressure at that point. And to me, it was unfair on the members of this board to do exactly what you articulated, right? In this particular case, I feel very strongly that we have got to educate the public about the nuances of this particular ballot initiative. So I don't care necessarily how that is done. I don't care if it's via a resolution that we vote on or if it's the way Sandy Hammerly just said. But I absolutely feel that in this particular initiative, we've got to commit to education. We've got to commit to getting the facts out on the matter and clarifying some things that the public at this point doesn't know about. They're agreeing on this matter. So it doesn't have to be voting on a resolution. It can simply be a commitment to getting the facts out as the facts are out there.
Well, to that end, if the board is going to do that, I think we need to unanimously decide to do that. Otherwise, it is not the unanimous board directing our town staff or directing someone to get something out there. I mean, I think individually, if we want to individually communicate things, then that's one thing. But the moment that we, as a board, start directing our staff or anyone else to do things and get things out there, whatever that is.
But Clint, let's face it, what's happening here.
What you're trying to do there is take a position.
What you're trying to do here is play politics with this particular conversation.
No, I'm not.
And you feel one way about this, and you should let the facts facts as get gotten out to the public. Because the facts are not a matter of opinion. The facts are a statement of facts. They're a statement of numbers that are totally auditable, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I asked to get out there. Not opinions by this board, just what the facts are.
Well, one person's
Sandy,
facts,
I think you're kind of wading into the thing that I'm trying to recuse myself from, so I'm happy to recuse myself
So
now.
Mark, can you just give me, I feel you. I would suggest that maybe without the political dialogue at a date certain, maybe the next work session, we run through the ballot initiatives and figure out if we could propose, if we had some resolution that say that the Board of Trustees supports the following ballot measures. And, I don't know, I forget the measure, but there's one that says slavery is bad, right? I think we could all agree slavery is really bad. And I would hope that the board would have support to approve the ballot measure that slavery is bad, right? And so that would be the easy example, and we would discuss it in work session and say, great. And then do we have another one that we could support? Maybe it's Y and Z that we could support. And then when we come to the one that's about Rocky Mountain Fire, it will be a vote, whether or not it's anonymous or not. There's a vote saying, do we support, do we not support? There's no political dialogue. If there's unanimous support for or unanimous support against, then it goes on the resolution. Otherwise, it doesn't, and there's no further dialogue. The second question around educating the public around ballot measures that impact our community, I agree that's an important dialogue, but I think it's a different question than the one that Clint is asking, which is generally, can we, as a board, do we have a policy to support or not support? Correct.
But he actually extended it to the second part of the question.
I understand, but I think with...
So let's be clear.
Right.
So if all we're doing is the resolution part of it, taking,
but does that feel like a remedy, or as a proposed remedy off the top of my head, where we have a quick 30-minute conversation at the next work session, so maybe 2 meetings from now, where we run through the ballot initiatives, figure out if we could support, and we come up with none, then there's no resolution. If we come up with one, then there's one. If there's 5, there's 5.
As long as we continue to have the discussion on the second part of.
Well, I think that's an appropriate conversation and questions once Mark has recused himself, because I think that's unique to the particular ballot.
Yes. Rita.
This is why we shouldn't really ever make some kind of rule that says we're going to give a resolution for or against a certain ballot measure, unless it's a ballot measure that we're asking to put on the ballot, which is what the one you were talking about, Mark, was the one about the allowing us to have the opportunity to consider broadband. We put that on, and so we should make a resolution about that. But when we come down to looking what's on the ballot, I think that it's really hard to determine amongst 7 of us here whether or not we would all be in favor of saying yes to a ballot measure. So instead of doing that, and also when you use the example of that we're all against slavery, right? Well, there are sometimes in the ballot language some unintended consequences. So the question, if yes, we are absolutely against slavery, but if you also throw in, remember the other kinds of things that kind of get hooks into other laws, and sometimes you must say, I can't support this language of this ballot, even though I'm against slavery. So it's really hard for this board, who's not engaged in every one of those issues, to be able to determine whether or not they're going to take a position. But I think what we can do, and what we should do, is that if there is a direct impact to our residents, that we need to ask the question of the sponsors. The questions of, can you provide more data in this area? Can you provide more information about what the actual increases in taxes are going to be? Can you give us more data about what the sunset clauses are going to be? You know, so ask questions that will help the residents be able to make a decision about this. But I don't think we, as this board, have any business making a position on something that's for the district voters or for the state voters. If it's our ballot issue, yes, definitely, we should take a position. I think our responsibility should be more to ask the questions of the sponsor and have the sponsors of that ballot language provide those answers so that residents can have real, considered, informed decisions. And I don't like taking a position. And I think you're almost always going to have a situation where at least 1 of 7 are going to say no. So in essence, you're never going to be able to take a position. I think we should go on the other side, which is ask the questions, let you, the sponsor, actually provide those answers, and keep after you until you provide them.
So that is the purpose of the second part of this agenda item, is to do just that. But I do like Kevin's suggestion, and I do think there are some circumstances where we could provide a valuable service to our residents that lets them know that we are unanimously in support of this list, whatever the list, it may be a short list, but I think that's what elected officials, in my view, are supposed to be doing, is helping decipher some of these things.
I can tell you right now, I will not vote yes on any resolution on any ballot item.
Okay, that answers that.
So that kind of solves your problem. I just don't believe that that's our role. No.
So
and if I have veto power, then I kind of just
veto
it. I don't like having just an arbitrary, prohibition that says, we're not going to do this, because, for example, there may be, these statewide ballot measures that are, highly publicized. There may have information campaigns both for and against, but then there may be, non-superior ballot measures, but for example, the jail, right, that we heard the presentation from Sheriff Pelley today. Those type of, county-wide efforts don't have necessarily the outreach efforts, that a statewide ballot campaign has, but they still need to, get the majority of the voters to pass. That might be something that is really not a political issue, but, we decide as a board, yeah, we really want to have a state-of-the-art jail facility or this, other facility that they were talking about building today. So, I think for us to just have a rule that says we're not going to do this unnecessarily ties our hands. I think we're sufficiently protected by having essentially absolute veto power by any one member of the board that, for all intents and purposes, Sandy, if you're going to vote no on every single one of these, that's fine. That's the way the system's supposed to work. But once the board turns over, when there are different trustees and a different mayor here on the dais, I think it's appropriate to have them have the ability to change that norm.
But understand, every new board makes its own rules, so your rules don't apply to a new board. I mean, our rules.
Microphone, Sandy.
Our rules don't apply to a new board. The new board will then make their own rules. So I guess after this election, when you seat the new board, you can ask this question all over again.
But I do think it's important from my perspective and as a resident, for 24 years here, I want as much information as I can possibly get. And I would like all of our officials and all the sponsors to provide that information. And if one body sees that what looks like a gap or less information than would be helpful to make that decision, then I think it's okay for us to reach out to that other body and say, you would be well served to provide more information about this ballot language. And that's what I think we should ask for, because we aren't controlling and we're not sponsoring those ballot issues. I just want us to ask for our residents to get as much information out there as possible for them to make the decision. Because I don't like to tell anybody how to vote. I just like to tell them the information about the candidates that I know, about the information that I know about the subject, but I tend not to say, and I think you should vote this way.
Okay, any further discussion on that?
Just a question, Mayor, sorry.
If I may chime in just quickly, I think I understand how some of the board members want to go with this policy. Before doing that, part of the concern is there's a fine line between staying in a position and urging the citizens how to vote a particular way, and that's not the role of the board. So if this is what the board wishes, I would ask that you allow the town attorney, allow us to look into if that's a possibility, and determine the legal implications of that sort of method.
I guess I'm not following you there.
The understanding I had is that the discussion is whether the board can present their positions to the citizens.
I think it was the idea was just a simple resolution of support on a given ballot initiative. However, it must be unanimous, and it sounds like, at least with this board, we're never going to get that. So it's kind of a
I think your question is separate. Your question was not the resolution, but whether we could provide information. You have to go back and see whether we can provide
more of a general
information on a topic. Not that we would have a resolution, but whether we could provide information.
Okay, and I don't.
That was what you were saying, is you weren't sure if we could actually legally do that.
That's correct.
And I don't think,
and I don't. Language is set. I don't think we can. If there was a question about how much we can participate.
I think we should be having this agenda item where we hear a presentation, we ask questions, and that's it. I don't think we should be going any further than that to provide anything beyond what is discussed in this meeting. Does anyone feel differently?
I think that's kind of what I said, is that, if we ask the questions and say, this is what we think.
That's what I heard you say, but I heard Sandy say something different.
Yeah, I am saying something different. In cases where the members of this board disagree with the data that's being presented, and it materially affects the residents of our community, I actually feel that's why I'm elected. I'm elected to make sure correct information is available. And I think we don't live up to what we are elected to do if we allow incorrect information to stay out there when we have every ability to correct it. And I'm talking fact, I'm not talking opinion. I believe we've had the first part of this discussion. I think we've got to go to the presentation now. At that point, I'll point out those things I disagree with in terms of the way they're being presented. And then you'll know, and I'll quit talking in generalities here. and then the attorney can weigh in.
Okay, Mark, closing remarks.
Yeah. Just for purposes of the public record, so I work for a law firm in Denver called Ireland Stapleton. Ireland Stapleton represents Rocky Mountain Fire District. Two of my colleagues, Dino Ross and Emily Powell, are here tonight on behalf of the Fire District. Since I have been elected here on the board, I have recused myself from any and all discussions involving the Fire District and the town. I'm going to continue that policy throughout my tenure here on the board, and I'm going to continue it here tonight. So, good night.
Good night. Okay, to begin with the second part of this agenda item, do we have a presentation that Rocky Mountain Fire or representative would like to make regarding this ballot initiative?
Thank you. Presentation may be a bit of an overstatement. We were notified on Saturday.
Do you mind starting with the introduction of your name?
Okay, on Saturday that this would be an agenda item. So we're coming here a little bit on an impromptu, but we have a lot of information to provide this board. My name is Dino Ross. I am an attorney and a partner at Ireland Stapleton Pryor and Pasco. With me is Emily Powell, who is also a partner at Ireland Stapleton. We are general counsel. That firm is to Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District. To give you a little bit of a sense of what we perhaps bring to the presentation that we will be providing, our firm's special district practice represents over 50 fire protection districts in the state of Colorado. We also serve as general counsel to the Colorado State Fire Chiefs, which represents another 300 and something odd fire departments, both municipal and fire protection districts. We're honored to do that. We also serve on the legislative committee to the Colorado Special District Association, the SDA. You may have heard of them, who represent thousands of special districts across the state of Colorado, and we work on their special district legislative committee as well. It's something that we have done for many years in looking at legislation and issues that affect emergency service providers in this state. We weigh in on legislation, we draft legislation, we deal with ballot questions. We have been doing this, I've been doing it for almost 30 years. So I think we bring a lot of experience to the discussion this evening and hope that you'll allow us to be a resource in this discussion. The issue that I think that this Board of Trustees is considering this evening is the Gallagher Amendment. That was adopted in 1982. The Gallagher Amendment requires basically a adjustment to the ratio between residential assessment, property values, and everything else. And we'll just call that non-residential, and that's commercial, agricultural, vacant, everything else. 45-55 split, right? That's what it's supposed to be, total tax burden. And I'm going over this quickly because I'm assuming many of your board members already got the general idea of Gallagher, but I want to make sure we all get on the same page before we start diving into the specifics on this. So that 45-55 split was set up by Dennis Gallagher at the time he drafted that amendment in 1982. That was as a result of the taxpayers at that time residential taxpayers feeling that they were getting hit with too much of the tax burden. At that time, residential tax burden was about 21%. So what he did is he said, all right, let's fix everything else, non-residential at 29% assessment rate, right? But it has to be 55% of the burden. 45% goes to residential, which means that you adjust the residential assessment rate every odd year. Colorado legislature adjusts it to maintain that 45-55 split. Now in 1982, that was 21%. However, we all know what's happened with residentials since 1982. It continues to outpace everything else. And so we've seen 21% drop, so that by the time we get up to 2003, it's gone to 7.96%. It stayed there all that time, and then in 2017, we first saw that there actually was going to be a movement to reduce it once again. And that was a kind of a big wake-up call for local governments that rely on property tax revenue as their source of income. Fire protection districts are particularly vulnerable to that because almost all of their revenue comes from property taxes. You know, when you do school districts, a lot of that's backfilled by the state. When you do park and rec districts or you do water and sand, they get to charge all other types of fees and assessments. We simply don't have that choice. Our statute limits us almost completely to property tax revenues. So we are particularly dependent upon those property tax revenue streams. 2017, the Department of Revenue for Colorado recommended that the assessment rate actually drop. Again, we're worried it was going to go down into the 6%, but she was able, Joanne Grove, who's the head of the Colorado Department of Revenue, she actually settled on 7.2%. That was a 9% drop in the residential assessment rate, which resulted in a significant loss of revenue to many fire protection districts across the state. Then what we know is that she has currently indicated that she is looking at another reduction in 2019, which will drop it to approximately 6.11%. That's another 15% drop in residential assessment rate, basically 24% within a period of about 4 years. 3-4 years. That's a huge drop in residential assessment rate. So we at the state level, Colorado state chiefs, local governments, municipalities, this is municipal fire departments as well. Those that depend on property taxes as part of their revenue base are getting hit by this as well. We're all looking at what is the solution out there. One of the things that they were looking at was perhaps we freeze the residential assessment rate and don't do a reassessment for a couple of years. That actually was introduced or attempted to be introduced this last legislative session. It failed. It may come up again this next legislative session. But what they did do is they set up an interim committee to study this real problem with local governments and the Gallagher Amendment's reduction of the residential assessment rate. That interim committee has been meeting this summer. It's looking at potential ways to approach what we call the Gallagher Amendment issue. But in the meantime, what we have are scores of local governments across the state that are seeing 24% reductions in residential assessment rates and those revenues that they no longer are able to receive, which are significantly adversely impacting their tax base. And what do you do about that? One of the things that they have been looking at, and this is what Rocky Mountain has been looking at, is asking the voters for permission to adjust its mill levy as necessary to reflect any adjustment in the residential assessment rate. Now, if you look at the ballot question that we drafted for Rocky Mountain, what that means is if the residential assessment rate goes up, our mill levy goes down. If the residential assessment rate goes down, like we think it will this next cycle, our mill levy will adjust up slightly to recover that loss in revenue. This is intended to be a revenue neutral ballot question, and it's designed simply to offset that adverse effect in the adjustment to the residential assessment rate. We have been trying to get statistics from the counties on how many special districts and municipalities are going to election in November. You know, everybody had to certify their ballot questions on September 7th, but we tried the counties today and they haven't got the materials pulled together. We'll probably have it within the next couple of weeks. I can tell you that my sense is you're seeing scores of local governments that are doing this. This is not a new concept. It is not new to Rocky Mountain. It is not new to this year. It has been done by developer districts for years. We have had some of the best minds in the legal community, particularly in local governments, who have worked on these ballot questions, worked on the way that they should be structured. We've had half a dozen attorneys in our office analyzing this issue. This is not something we just kind of threw together. This is something that has been carefully analyzed for years. And the ballot question that Rocky Mountain is submitting, we believe, is the best language that we can put together based on the case law that is out there to date. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at on this. We have representatives of the district here. The chief is here, board members. We are here to answer questions. We can drill down on the specific language of the ballot. We can answer why every single word is in there for you, put it in context, answer any questions you have. But I don't know where your discussion is going from here. So I'd like to see where you want to go.
Okay. I'm sure we have a number of questions. I'll start off with one, and that is there's been some considerable discussion at the state level that the state legislature needs to fix this because you shouldn't have to be going through this individually. I mean, districts should not have to be. This is a waste of complete waste of resources. It's a complete inefficiency, but nonetheless, it's where you are. So if something happens at the state level in the next legislative session or in the future, will that nullify whatever is done here?
The answer is perhaps, but let me put it in context. The state legislature cannot fix Gallagher. Gallagher is a constitutional amendment. Your legislature can't do anything to change a constitutional amendment. What they can do is vote perhaps in 2019 to refer it to a statewide election to change Gallagher. But until we get a statewide election to change Gallagher, fundamentally change this locked-in ratio that we have, there's nothing your legislature can do to really effectively change anything at a legislative level. This is a constitutional amendment issue. We can kind of tweak and dance around it and everything. Are we going to see anything that comes out of this? My understanding is it takes a 2/3 vote out of the House and out of the Senate to actually get a state referendum in 2019. We didn't even get the legislative will to delay the reassessment last session. So if you're asking me what my crystal ball says, I'm not sure I'm going to see anything in 2019. Maybe 2020. And what does that look like then? There are all kinds of discussions out there on what those changes might be. How would they affect a ballot like this? It's like asking, how many angels dance on the head of a pin? It's just too speculative to even know.
Okay, thank you. Rita.
So the concern that I have with this is that it seems like Gallagher is working exactly the way it's supposed to, because you're going to get the same amount as valuations for residential goes up, then the assessed valuation, which drives additional revenue, tax revenue, naturally. Higher valuations naturally will drive higher revenues, tax revenues. And so with Gallagher, they're saying that if you have residential going up, generally commercial valuations go up as well. So they're trying to keep the amount of revenue coming as at 45-55 split, so you have to lower the assessed valuation. What we had in order to have the same amount of taxes coming, that 45-55 split. So in Colorado, in Boulder County, what we had is a 30% increase in valuation of residential property, and probably that or more for commercial, but we're only talking about residential because that's what we have in Superior, primarily is residential. So we have a 30% increase in valuation of residential property, which caused Gallagher then to lower the assessed valuation down from 7.96 down to 7.2. The actual assessed valuation using your 19 point whatever mills got you more tax revenue than when you had it at 7.96%. So you're using the analysis, or at least that's what I've seen so far, is that there was no change in the the valuation of property. So that $500,000 property, you don't show it going up 30%, but then using a 7.2 against that 130% valuation actually gets you more tax revenue.
Well, and I think that's a great comment. But
no, that's a question.
Yeah,
it's a comment, but it's also a question. Can you draw that out in your not here tonight? I'm not necessarily asking it
generally right now.
But what I've seen so far of all of the documentation is that you use that valuation number as constant and you're lowering the assessed valuation down. Sure, naturally, you're not going to get as much tax. But that's not the case. The market valuation is here. It went up 30% to here. Your assessed valuation went down a little bit, but you got more tax revenue out of it because the valuations went up so much. You need to explain that.
I will.
Because not to me, I'm talking about to the people that are going to have to vote on this.
Well, that's a great point. It's all an educational process. But let me address your comments in the question that's embedded there. First, let's step back and take a bigger picture of this. We're not just in Boulder County. The Gallagher Amendment requires a ratio that is set up on a statewide basis, okay? And so when you talk about a valuation increase, total evaluation increase in Boulder County, well, that might be great for Boulder County, but what about Delta County? What about Alamosa? What about all the other counties?
But you're not in all those counties, are they? Is Rocky Mountain, they're not in those?
Rocky Mountain isn't there. And
no, we're only talking about where Rocky Mountain Metro is.
We're going to get to Rocky Mountain, but let's talk the bigger picture first. Is Gallagher is a blunt instrument that works on a statewide basis.
I understand that, but we're not here to change Gallagher. We're here to understand how it impacts the tax
if you
generated.
You're not concerned about the larger good of the state, then that's fine. But let's walk to this.
Well, but we're only talking about the tax change for the Rocky Mountain Metro.
Let's talk about Boulder County. If you don't want to look at the bigger picture, that's fine. I get that.
Okay.
But let's talk about Boulder County. Since 1992, when Tabor was put in place, the Colorado legislature has refused to raise the residential assessment rate in 7 cycles, which is 14 years, when it should have done so, because it says Tabor won't allow it to do that. That means that Gallagher's pendulum, if you will, the way that it adjusts up and down, is broken. And it has been broken since 1992, which means all those years when we should have, in those down years, been able to increase our mill levy or increase the residential assessment rate to, like the recession, right? It should have gone up in 2008. In many other years, it should have gone up as well. We never saw that. So these local governments never saw the increase that they should have seen in those revenues. So we get that cut off, and then you say in the years when it does go up, that somehow we're seeing this appreciation, and that masks the fact that we're not even getting all the appreciation we should have gotten there. So it's a double whammy. We don't get it in the down years, and in the up years, we're not even getting all the amount that we're supposed to.
Never happened in Boulder County, so I'd like to get back to the issue that we're talking about here tonight.
Sure.
I don't want to talk about generally Gallagher. I want to talk about the impact that you're proposing to all of us, that you have lost revenue for Rocky Mountain Metro Fire District because of the fact that Gallagher has dropped your assessed valuation. In the actual numbers and the equation, you have not lost tax revenue. You just need to be able to explain that. You need to not say a statement that's a blanket statement about generally in the state of Colorado what Gallagher has done to others. All I want to know is what it's done to you, to Rocky Mountain Metro. And I'm not challenging you as much as,
it's an observation.
I'm asking you to provide the data. It's not that I'm trying to contradict you or challenge you as to get rid of what you're proposing. I just want to understand, because right now it doesn't make sense to ask people to raise your mill levy, which is the highest of any fire district in the land around me, and so to raise more mills when you're getting more tax revenue given this current equation using this Gallagher. So what I'm saying to you is you must be able to explain that. If you can't explain it to me, how are you going to think you're going to explain it to residents?
Point well taken. In 2017, going into 2018, when it was dropped 9%. The amount that we should have in additional revenue was $620,000.
It's on a flat market valuation, though.
No. This is why I'm so vehement about this. Rocky Mountain Fire District, our district, spent the money to put out 3 consecutive mailings to our entire community, misrepresenting what's going on.
We disagree with that statement.
Well, let me talk, please, and then you'll have an opportunity. It says, this more than 9% decrease in the residential assessment rate resulted in Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District losing $620,000 in revenue in 2018. You lost no revenue in 2018. Let me go to the numbers. In 27, your total property tax revenues were $8.710 million. In 2018, they were $8.945 million for an increase of $235,000 year to year. You gained $235,000 year to year in revenues. There was no $620,000 decrease in revenues. In a matter of fact, because our community passed in 2012 an 8 mill levy increase, 4 immediately and then 4 over the subsequent years, your revenues, Rocky Mountain Fire revenues, have almost doubled from 2012, in which this was passed, of $4.654 million, and as I said, in 2018, we're $8.945 million. So we've got a couple of things happening in Superior, and that is, Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District. And that's all we can look at here, because this is the impact on our residents. We can't look at statewide and look at what's happening to property values there. We can only know that we are at record high property valuations in this region. And what you want to do is you want to participate in those record high property values at that same 7.96 rate.
No.
And that's the
7.2%.
Yes, exactly. The record high property valuation, total assessed valuation in 2018 was $438 million, a record high. And what you want to do is, in your mailing, you wanted to participate in that at the 7.96 rate.
Or offset the reduction by adding mills.
That's offsetting the reduction. That is exactly what you wanted to do. You wanted to benefit from record high property valuations to maximize revenues to Rocky Mountain Fire. Gallagher is, in Boulder County, Gallagher is working exactly the way it was designed. As property valuations rise, and they've risen by this 30% that Rita said, we're at record highs, that Gallagher assessment rate comes down, and all it came down was 9%. Which means even with a 9% reduction to 7.2% assessment rate, your Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District is enjoying 90% of the valuation rise that has happened in housing values here. That's why these numbers that they're taking in from property tax revenues are at record highs. So it is a gross misstatement to our public that says you've lost $620,000.
We disagree.
What that $620,000 is if you had it at the max of 7.96 and you had record high property values, and that isn't how the system's designed to work. So, in my opinion, our residents now have been misled 3 times in these mailings. So while you may have to do this out in eastern Colorado because property valuations are low and they may be falling, and I understand that out there where they're falling, if your assessment rate is falling, then total revenues do fall, right? They do. Valuations fall, assessment rates fall. Yes, those fire districts out there bring in less money, but that is distinctly not the case in Boulder County. And that is what is so insulting to me if, in what is happening to the residents of this community. And it is paramount that we as elected officials let them know what the situation in Boulder County is. I now want to go to your ballot language.
So did you have a question for me, or are you
Yes, I'm going to. Yes, but this is also my time to educate my community and to educate whoever's listening as to what's happening.
Okay, I'd like him, hold
No,
on,
I don't-
hold on. I'd like him to respond to
Yes.
you
Okay,
did
go ahead
raise a
and
question
respond,
about the
and then I
revenue,
will
and
get to
you
the
cut him
actual
off several
ballot later.
times, so I'd like him to respond to that.
We see a reduction in the amount of revenue that we should have received, but for the reduction in the residential assessment rate. Now, you can characterize that as something that is a gross misstatement. It is literally less revenue than we should have received, $620,000.
But that is why Gallagher exists in the first place, to
Well, you can
compensate
disagree
for
on-
Okay,
increase.
let him respond,
property.
let him continue. You
You can
talked a long
disagree
time.
Right,
about
but when
whether-
a statement's being said wrong, Clint, the fact is that's why Gallagher exists.
This is ridiculous.
Is in a rising, in a rising valuation market.
Okay, Sandy, let him have his points.
I'm a resident here, and I can't believe the way this is being handled.
Okay.
So we believe, and it is true, that we receive $620,000 less than we would otherwise have received, but for the reduction in the residential assessment rate. That is a fact.
Based on a same constant assessment, but
The
you're
overall
not
value.
going the second step, which is saying, but in this case, the reason that it went down from 7.96 down to 7.2 is because the valuation of the residential went up significantly.
There's additional that you can tag on to that, but we also lost another.
You didn't lose. You had the potential of losing if you're using that same market valuation you're calling
We
it.
are receiving less revenue than we otherwise would have received, but for the reduction in the residential assessment rate, which is exactly what this literature says.
But the residential assessment rate went down because the valuation went up so drastically.
Right, but if the residential assessment rate hadn't been reduced, we would have received this
It
revenue.
wouldn't have been reduced if the market valuation hadn't gone up so high. So we're talking about one side of it, but we're not talking about the other side of why Gallagher changes the assessed valuation. You don't ever use one part of the equation, which is, there's X and Y happening here. You've got X, which is the market, the valuation going up. And then that drives the assessed valuation down. But in this case, if you use both sides of that equation, X and Y, you end up with more tax revenue.
Which is what happened in 2018.
Yeah. So that's all we're saying, is that you're using the statement that if the market valuation had stayed constant and then the assessed valuation went down, but that's not the reason the assessed valuation went down. It's because the market valuation went up.
Okay, Kevin's going to comment, and then I'll shift back over here.
So, before I start a question, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Dino Ross.
Dean, thank you. The ballot language is fixed, correct? It is firm. It can't be modified at this point.
We
Is
have
that your-
certified it to the county.
So it is certified into the county.
That is
ballot language cannot be changed.
Right.
Okay, I have a question for Chief. So if you could just make your way up, please. And just on your way up, I just want to, I'm very uncomfortable with this whole proceeding tonight. A couple of you may have been in the audience. I recognize today's date. You guys are all my heroes. You run into fires. You do things that I can't possibly imagine. And 17 years ago, the most amazing thing happened. So I'm very uncomfortable with tonight's conversation. So, Chief, could I just start by you introducing the team? Would you introduce your firefighters, please?
Well, yeah.
Or have them do it.
Appreciate that.
If you...
Why don't you guys stand up each and just introduce yourself, tell them what you do.
Thank you.
I'm Joel. I'm a firefighter paramedic. Been here 11 years. I'm Kyle. I'm an engineer. Drive a truck. Been here 15 years.
I'm Ben. I'm a firefighter paramedic. I've been here about 6 months.
I'm Steven. I'm a firefighter paramedic as well. Been here about 6 months.
Jesse Zerfoss, engineer, paramedic, 11 years.
Chuck Moore, Lieutenant, 18 years.
Julia Sentes, firefighter with Rocky Mountain for 5 years.
Mike Ivan, 6, Lieutenant, 18 years.
Mike Lowell, fire paramedic, about 6 months.
Tony Scott, captain, 14 years.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. So, as I talked about a couple weeks ago when you were here, I have no problem with taking to those voters. I personally don't think the timing on this is great. I don't love the ballot language, but you certified the ballot language, so having me comment about the ballot language in particular, I don't think it would do anybody any service. My primary objection is a little bit about how this is presented. You know, when we talk about the phrase loss of revenue, you know, you don't say in the paperwork, but for the reduction. You know, that's the thing that's lost as the, I don't want to say the average voter, but a lot of our members of the community are trying to understand. Most of us have not heard of Gallagher, and when you start putting in de-Gallagherization, people's eyes glaze over, man. They're just not going to get it. I've spent a lot of time on this, and I'm not quite there. So I just think that's, if we could turn back the clock a little bit, recognizing that the ballot language, you know, you made the decision to put it through. I think it would have been great as a partnership if we could have agreed on what the ballot language looked like, if we could agree on how this was being communicated to the community, because it's not being, in what I'm reading, it's not being communicated as loss of revenue, but for the reduction, it's being communicated as a loss of revenue, and nobody wants to vote against that. So I just think that, you know, my advice to you guys, as you're seeking to continue to educate the community, you know, but for the reduction is a pretty legal phrase after, hey, we're talking about a potential revenue reduction. Really, we're not. It's the old joke, you know, if I go out and buy a new suit and the suit was 50% off and, oh, it didn't cost anything, I bought it for the money I saved. Well, no, you didn't. There was still money. And so I think that's the point that I think a lot of us are losing. I have other comments around how we could better collaborate. We heard from members of the community earlier about, you know, closing that road around how this maybe is not the best forum to engage, and you and I have had conversations. I don't think this is the best forum for us to engage you tonight, especially given the somber date. So that would be the end of my comments tonight. And again, thank you for your service.
Okay. Did you have a question?
I really don't have a question outside of just I wanted to give you the opportunity. You brought your team tonight, and I wanted to pay them respect and just have them introduce themselves.
I appreciate that. I do.
I guess my request was, as you consider the continued education,
I will tell you that the fire district is not a political entity. It's not what we're good at. We're not good at marketing either. We've hired people to help us with some concepts. That's it. I will say, though, that I know everybody's getting hung up on loss of revenue, but if it wasn't for Gallagher, we would have had $623,000 more in our revenue generation this year, period. There's no question about that. I understand that the assessed evaluations went up because the county does that, not the fire district, right? They do the appraisals. They do that every 2 years. Gallagher has the potential for ratcheting every year, okay? So when it happens in the in-between year, which is coming up, you know, we're not gonna get that offset again. So, you know, we've gone through the recession periods without having any increases, and the increase in the assessed evaluations that the county did, not the fire district, we are going to get extra money for that. We count on that to make up that 8% a year that our expenses go up. And it's just the case in our business. I'm sure it is in everybody's life as well. But that's a 10-year average for us is an 8% increase in expenses between insurance, fuel, truck costs, all those things, health insurance, all those things increase. So that's what we use and really identify those additional dollars that come in from those assessments every 2 years if they go up. We use that to help us with that 8% change that we have in our budgets. So that's the only answer I have. I understand where you're all coming from on that issue, but I'm telling you that's the truth. The only other statement, we did not get a 30% increase. Maybe the county did, but our little world, our district, our 50 or 60 square miles, saw about a 12 to 14% generally last year. So that's us. That's Rocky Mountain Fire. So that's about all I have on that. But I apologize if we're not good politicians and good marketers. You know, that's all I can say. We'll do better. I would like to have the opportunity to come with a polished presentation to this board. I would like to hope I can get a fair shake at presenting it, if you would like that, for the public's sake. Okay?
Thank you.
Emily Powell, Ireland Stapleton. I also represent the district along with Dina Ross. You know, I've been sitting and listening to the comments made by the trustees tonight, having been intimately involved with the preparation of this ballot issue. I've also been listening to Dina's responses, and something occurred to me, which is we're all agreeing on the same basic facts. We're all agreeing that residential assessment rates went up, and that as a result, the Gallagher Amendment caused the RAR to go down. I believe we are also agreeing that had residential assessment rates had residential assessments rates gone up and the Gallagher Amendment had not caused the RAR to go down, the district would have had $623,000 more dollars than it has today. What I think we have fundamentally is a disagreement between the trustees and chief staff as to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or a neutral thing. It sounds as though some members of the Board of Trustees may feel that the fact that the district did not collect $623,000 because Gallagher did what it does not harm the district. Whereas chief staff believes that the fact that the district does not have $623,000 because Gallagher did what it does in fact impair the district's long-term ability to forecast and plan and budget and provide the same level of service to the community that it provides today. And that is why they put the ballot issue on the ballot to say, can we stabilize our revenues so that we know year over year what we can plan for in our budget and the services that we can provide to the community. And we can disagree all day long on whether Gallagher is doing good things or bad things in Boulder County, and we're not going to resolve that tonight. But to the extent you do have questions on why this ballot issue is worded the way that it is, or the amount of revenue that the district would receive if Gallagher were not operating this way, we certainly can provide that data. I cannot tell you about the services that the district receives or how the district anticipates having to evaluate those services in the future should this ballot issue pass or not pass, but I'm sure that chief staff can provide you that information, and as Chief Tombolato said, would be more than happy to do that if invited back to present at a future board meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Rita.
That is the best summation I've ever heard from anybody about the issue of the Rocky Mountain Metro Fire. So if you're going to ever come back to anybody and talk, I would say that you need to bring Emily back to do the speaking for you. So that's what you need to say. You need to say that, yes, we got more revenue than we got last year, but we could have and should have, or we could have, not should have, because Gallagher is what it is. We could have received an additional $600, and this is why we need that $600,000. Not this gobbledygook here that says Gallagher did this, de-Gallagherize that, do blah, 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 blah. Because it's not a rational analytical statement for most people, for you all to say, we got less tax revenue, we got less revenue because of Gallagher, when the numbers do not show that. The numbers show you got more tax revenue. Now, no, you got more. Actual cash in the coffers was more. Sandy told you the numbers. So you're saying you could have gotten an additional $600,000, but Gallagher took that away. Then you have to go to, what's the budget? And we've had that discussion, Mike, Chief Mike, many times over the years that I've been involved here on the board. Help understand what your budget is and what your next year's budget is and how you're going to spend that money. And, do you need to maybe tighten something over here or not do something over here, or do we have to have that new ambulance or whatever? And then that's where you have to come back and say, in order to be able to provide our increasing number of service calls for ambulance service or wildfire fires. Don't open space, don't get me off on that one, you know, because I don't think that's our responsibility. But, you know, whatever your services are, you need to say, this is our budget, this is how much I need to get in revenue, and because I'm short $600,000 because of the change in the calculation, this is what I'm going to have to forego. So in order for us to stabilize this, this is what we want. Yes, we've received more money this year than we received last year, because that's a fact. Cash from Boulder County, collected from Superior residents and other residents and commercial property within the Rocky Mountain Metro Fire District, you receive more tax revenue than you did last year, or, you know, each preceding year. So you can't sit there and tell people that are going to vote on this that we receive $600,000 less when we look at the numbers and you receive more. You don't, no, I know, but don't try to educate Rita, you know, on this. I don't need that tonight at 10 minutes to 10. I'm educating you. The issue is, it makes no sense to say you received less money when you actually received more money this year than you did last year. I understand. It's about the equation. But you have to then tie that to, did you have an impact on your budget? You receive more tax revenue. I'm not asking for the answer tonight. I'm asking you to present this in a way more like what Emily did, rather than coming back and being, rather than coming back and trying to tell me about Gallagher. I don't want to hear about Gallagher. I'm a resident now that's going to have to vote. I don't want to hear about that. I want to understand what impact voting for this or not voting for this will have on my services I'm going to receive from Rocky Mountain Metro Fire District. That's what I want to know. I don't want anything that says de-Gallagherizing. I want you to say, because of Gallagher, the equation changed. We could have received $600,000 more. This is what we needed it for. And now I'm asking you, you know, Rocky Mountain Fire I'm looking at Chief Mike. You know, you all are saying, we're asking you to agree to allow us to increase our mill levy if we need that money. Not just automatically give it to us, but, you know, trust us. We want to trust you. And we've had that discussion over the many years. So I just would ask you, and we've had this, you came and presented this, and we've said the same thing. Could you just make it a little more clear what you're asking for?
Okay, so Rita, to your point and to Chief's request, I would like to give the opportunity, if you'd like to come back now that this is a ballot initiative, to come back and give a proper presentation. This agenda item was hastily put on the agenda, and I appreciate all of you mobilizing to come here on such short notice with no presentation. We needed to get the information. I think it's been an informative conversation. I think we have made some headway here, but I think just as we've done for every other ballot initiative we've heard from, we need to hear a proper presentation that you would like to deliver, and we can again have additional dialogue and questions from the board and the public and so on. But I don't think this should be the end of it, because it would not be fair to you to just kind of end it here without a presentation.
Well,
and I think
we'd appreciate the opportunity to make a formal presentation to the board, and your comments are well taken. I think we see things differently, and obviously my job is to advocate my vision and my understanding of the language, so I just don't think that we see it quite the same. One point that I do want to make that keeps getting lost in this is the ballot that we have presented goes both ways. We all talk about, oh, you're just going to raise your mill levy, but in fact, we would be required to reduce that mill levy should the residential assessment rate ever go up. That is no small issue. Okay, and we all talk about, well, what's going to happen next year? This ballot lives for many years, and we don't know what the residential assessment rate is going to do in future years. And so this is a very balanced ballot question that goes both ways and protects the community against just a tax rate increase, a mill levy increase, It also contemplates a tax reduction in appropriate circumstances.
Okay, thanks.
But I think the only comment I would make is we haven't experienced a lot of that reduction in the town of Superior. And so it's a little hard for us to get around. There are several folks out there in that audience who have come to my house and have personally provided service to me, and I appreciate every single one of them. Please know this has nothing to do with you or the level of service that you provide. I really appreciate it. What we're trying to do is make sure that our residents understand what they're voting for. This is a very confusing statement. I'm sitting up here on the dais. I'm a little more educated than probably about 90% of the people who are out there voting. And it's confusing for me, and I understand it. So what we really need from Rocky Mountain Fire and from you is help our voters understand this. For example, I look at a piece of paper that was handed out at the Chili Fest, and it talks about what would my portion of the 2019, what would my 2019 tax bill be? And then if this passes, what would that mean? Well, it's an 18% increase. But I don't know, sitting here looking at this, okay, off the top of my head, what did I pay this year? Furthermore, this starts at $400,000. There are very, very, very many people in the town of Superior whose houses are not assessed at $400,000. I think we got more people less than $400,000 than we got people at $1.8 million. So if you're going to do this and you're going to share it with the town of Superior, let's get some more realistic numbers in here and give us a sense of what did the person who had that $233,000, give us a sense of what did I pay this year? Because most people aren't going to know that. We need to help educate our voters. I want you guys to get the money you need to do your business. But help me communicate to my voters.
I hear you loud and clear. So the bottom line is that if you allow us to come back, we'll give you a nice presentation, non-political, non-marketing, straight up facts. One of the things that I was trying to prevent in this whole round was, you know, if we don't get the money, we're not going to be able to save your babies. You know, I don't want to get into that kind of conversation. Bottom line is we don't make widgets. We sit in the fire stations and are ready to respond to any calls that happen, mostly emergencies, although we do on other calls, as you well know. If we don't have funding over a period of time, and I'm looking at this as a sustainable model, not something that gets us through the next 2 years. Our marketing, or I should say our budgeting process goes out 10 years. That's the way we look at it. We want to be here for life. We want to provide these services at the level they are currently for life, okay? Because people depend on it. And so, yes, have we had a little bump in revenues because the assessed valuation finally went up? Great. But that's not going to solve the problems, and I can't even answer the problems that are going to come up financially for our service level for the next 10 years. So that's the way we're looking at it. That's the way it'll get presented to you. But the bottom line is that if we cut something, it's immediate change the service level to the communities that we serve. There's nothing more that we could do. I can cut back training. That's not enough money to make up the difference, okay? All I have is people and fire trucks and fire stations. There's nothing else to cut. So if we have to start cutting stuff because we're not getting the revenues necessary to provide the current level of services for the out years, we'll have to start making that reduction in services. That means less ambulances, less fire trucks, less firefighters. That's as simple as it gets. I'll give it to you in a nice format so that it makes sense, and I can give you a 10-year forecast of that. Is that good?
Yes, that's
that would be much better. I understand where you're coming from. I also understand if I have to pay $100 more to Rocky Mountain Fire District than I paid this year, then I don't have $100 to do something else.
I understand.
So that's where we just want to understand.
And that calculation, by the way, is not produced by the fire district. But I'm going to tell you that calculation has built-in assessment increase in it, not not Rocky Mountain Fire's tax differential.
So
Yes.
it's Captain Tombolato, right?
Chief.
Chief Tombolato.
But if you'd like
I'm
to talk
gonna
to
go
Tony,
to-
he's a captain.
Okay, I'm going to go to another level of frustration. We sit down with you every year, and we have a dinner, and we air all of our concerns and pride and all that kind of stuff. And for the last 3 or 4 years, since the 2012 mill levy increase, we have expressed quite articulately how concerned we are at the 50% share of this total property tax revenue that comes from the town of Superior. And in the numbers I've been provided, 28% of the services at the time the numbers were presented to me came to Superior, but Superior paid 50% of the costs at that time. Now, that's a number I would like you to update for me when you come back. How much does it cost to provide the services that Superior uses, and how much revenue do we provide? So I'd like an update on that.
Okay.
But in those meetings, we've had those dinner meetings with you, we've asked for collaboration with you to try to bring these things under control. Because right now, our residents pay 21 mills, 20 to 21 total mills, as opposed to our neighbors' residents who pay 6 mills, right? We pay more than 3 times. So we've asked for collaboration. So imagine my surprise, then I open up the mail and I read that first mailing, and it talks about a shortfall of $620,000, and I'm saying this isn't the case. I've got the data in my notebook right here, right? And call the town manager, and he says, well, they've said they're just contemplating the possibility of floating this referendum. Well, at that point, I certainly would have appreciated, or prior to that, in the air of collaboration, you would have called us and said, can you all sit around a table with me? Here's the situation. We need to, for your operating reasons, you spell them out. We're having problems here, we're not meeting ends here, we're doing this and what, and service may have to suffer, right? So why do you guys, the elected officials here, and you come in with the elected officials in the rest of your fire protection district, but because we pay half the bill, I think we deserve to be met with. And we offered this and offered this and offered this. And so here we are now. Where we have ballot language that provides for the residents of this community, they've got to understand there are no caps on this, that we're at 21 mills now max that we can be at. And what Sandy was referring to when I did the math on it for your projections for 2020, to equalize yourself to have all of Gallagher money out there is another 4 mills in just that 1 year. That's what it came out to be. 4 years in 1 year, which is what we did in 2012 through a special referendum, and it was the largest increase in on record here, by far. Before then, things increased by no mills, 2 mills, same, 0, 0, 0, 4. Then 1, then 1, then 1, then 1. And we're talking about 4 mills, again, in 1 single calendar year. I'm a quantitative person, and the numbers are facts. That's what the numbers say, and our residents need to be educated. So if you had equalized in 2018 and you equalized in 2019, I'm projecting that at 3 mills plus 3 mills, and there's 4 mills, our residents would have had 10 mills just for your Gallagher equalization, another 10 mills after having just done 8 mills since 2012. So these are the numbers. Yeah, I want to read you off the assessed valuation numbers. Between 2014 and 2015, the assessed valuation was about equal. Total assessed valuation and property values, right, was about equal. Okay, and your total property tax revenues increased about $300,000, right? just because of property tax valuations staying about equal. You still had a little gain, right? But the very next year is when the boom started in Boulder County. Property tax total assessed valuations increased in the county by $56 million from being the same the prior tax period. And your budgets, only because of the boom in property valuations, went up $1.5 million. Your revenues, your total property tax revenues, in that one single year went up $1.5 million revenues. You got them in your coffers, not because you were having some expansion, not because your costs had increased, not because ambulance services and demands had increased, but solely because of this boom in assessed property values in this area.
Right.
So that is not fair.
Remember last time I was here, and maybe the 5 or 6 other times that I've been at this podium and in the various joint board meetings, we've had all these discussions. We've reiterated this stuff. We've talked about it, I don't know how many times, that we have no control over the landscape.
Right.
We've had, open space created. We've been annexed by every major city surrounding this area. We've been tiffed by our own community and taken $500,000 from the constituents, not the fire district, to provide services. All that's happened to this district. We've talked about it on numerous amounts of times. So the additional $1.5 million, $1 million of those dollars went into giving this community itself its own ambulance. So it's not like we're running and hiding with the money, or that we're stockpiling it for something, I don't know what. What is it that we should be doing?
So I'm not saying you're not using it responsibly. I'm just saying that's why the Gallagher adjustment exists. When property values increase by $50 million in one calendar period, and that gives you a windfall of $1.5 million, Gallagher is there to adjust it downward, right? But Gallagher didn't even come into effect. The following year, you had another $400,000 increase because of what valuations did. And so this year was the first time, I believe, it's got about 10 years at 7.96 on my list. It dropped to 7.2. But Gallagher did exactly what it was intended to do. You are not expected to be able to just capitalize on increased property valuations, right? That's why you came to us in 2012, when property valuations were not increasing. In 2012, we're just coming out of the 2008 recession. Property values.
Sandy, we've got to end this.
That's okay.
This is going
Quit
too
cutting
far.
me off.
Okay, you're going too far here.
In 2008, things flattened or declined in terms of property valuations. And then
as a comment, though, is our services that we've been requested to provide have doubled in the last 5 years. So we went from providing somewhere around 800 calls a year. We're responding to well over 2,000 now.
That is why.
That there is an increase in our service demands.
And that is why you came to us in 2012. In 2012,
Sandy,
when property valuations were falling, right? And you were really getting less money. You came
to. We have a question pending. This is just going on and on.
Yeah, Sandy, this is
oratory than it is.
This is.
But I'm trying. There's a
no. You're lecturing.
Public out.
You're lecturing, and this needs to.
There's
this
a
needs
public
to end.
out there that wants to understand the Gallagher impact, and this is the Gallagher impact.
Provide a presentation to this board, but we're not here to just be lectured at.
Pardon? I'm not lecturing.
Yes.
I'm not lecturing
Yes,
to
you
you.
absolutely are.
I am talking to the residents of the town of Superior who watch these meetings on the TV.
I'd like to give an opportunity for public comment and shift gears a little bit. If there's anyone that would like to make public comment, now is the opportunity, please. Please.
David Harper, 104 6th Avenue, Superior. I've received the 3 circulars that you sent out, and I have to say that I read them as saying that the actual revenue that the fire department receives is going down by $600,000 as a result of the Gallagher amendment. It did not come across to me that this was an opportunity cost as a result of the Gallagher amendment. It came across as this was an actual revenue reduction. I have to say that having listened to this tonight, I feel I was lied to, and I object to that. Thank you.
Okay, additional public comment? Any additional public comment? Okay, any closing thoughts? We need to wrap this discussion up. Go ahead.
When do you think you would be able to come back, Chief Mike? And Matt, when could it get on the?
Right now, I'm thinking October 8th.
Okay. I just to set expectations for everybody. Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, anything further from the board? Well, we have, or anything further on this agenda item? All right, we have next on the agenda item is an executive session to hold a conference with town attorney to receive legal advice.
That, I just added that in case for the option if the board wanted to.
I don't see any purpose in that. Okay. All right, so there's no executive session, there's no action. Anything further before we adjourn? Okay, nothing further, thanks. We're adjourned.